Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Happy Friday, everyone. And it is time to break down basically everything that just happened over the past 2 weeks. Trades, free agencies, all that and much more. We're going team by team today, trying to figure out, hey, where are there still some, depth chart holes that maybe can be filled in the draft? Where are some teams that made some moves and now all of a sudden we have a much better idea about who's going to be featured? Again, all that and so much more alongside me as always, Dwain The Rock McFarland. Dwain, we've talked, now twice in like 24 hours after going like 5 days without it, man. It's good to be back.
Yeah, man. Come on. Like, we got to get our groove going again. I missed having Ian. I missed having Ian there for a few days. But no, man, excited. Like, this is fun. Like, we kind of get to go team by team, walk back through everything we kind of set up before all this started. We had no clue it was going to be this wild. I never imagined Christian Kirk would change the whole landscape of the NFL.
Stupid. It's just...
Dude, I'm thinking really, like, I was thinking about us yesterday, talking about the Amari thing. Like, the Cowboys, like, totally should have gotten more for Amari. No, like, if they would have known, like, what Christian Kirk was going to get and what that was going to do to the rest of the receivers, now all of a sudden Amari, $20 million a year looks pretty good. Like, that's something another team probably would have really paid more than what they did. Just the ripple effect of what happened in those first few days, and then the big trades, of course.
I like to chill a little bit on Amari and Woods, how'd you only get a 6th-rounder for them? Because the contract is kind of the reason why. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Christian Kirk is now making, best case scenario more than Amari was, obviously you would have preferred if the Cowboys had gotten.
Yeah, and that's my only point is that actually now, like, they should be more attractive options. Now Woods is a little older, than Amari, but yeah, I mean, I would think they would be more attractive given the fact that, they're making less than Christian Kirk and better players.
Let's get right into it, starting off with the Arizona Cardinals. So, Dwain, when we started the whole offseason, like, Arizona just stood out as the one team where tight end, wide receiver, running back, everyone was basically unrestricted. Yeah, we had a little bit of Kyler Murray drama, which, now just seems like a decade ago based on everything that's gone on over the past few weeks. But running back, Chase Edmonds, now a member of the Miami Dolphins. James Conner, you could argue, is the single biggest winner of free agency, now set to be featured in Arizona. Still have some work to do on the outside. Obviously, we got Hopkins back, but as we were just talking about, the man Christian Kirk now resides in Jacksonville. AJ Green still a free agent. I don't think Antoine Wesley is going to be starting in 3 wide receiver sets, but right now, Rondale Moore does project as a starting slot receiver, and Zach Ertz came back on a big $30 million deal stretching over 3 years. So I think we know we're getting an Ertz. Like, he was a legit tight end one during his time with the Cardinals last year. Now, a lot of that did come with Hopkins out of the picture. But again, there's so few guys coming back to the offense at wide receiver, particularly right now, that I do think Ertz is, going to be someone that's hard to rank outside your top 12 at a minimum, outside the top 15. Dwain, the 2 real interesting pieces here are, one, James Conner, who, we talked a little bit about in the rankings. This guy is a legit top 10 running back right now. I have him, I believe, 7th in the early ranks because he's going to have the 3-down role that we don't see many teams give out. But Cliff Kingsbury has done that every step of the way in Arizona. So we'll see if they had anyone in the draft. But no, we're not worried about Benjamin making this, a split or anything like that. Should be the James Conner show. How do you feel about Rondale Moore right now, Dwain? Because I was doing an underdog draft last night with my lovely friends John Daigle, Hayden Winks, shout out 4 for 4 supplying the stream. And Rondale Moore is going where he was last year, if not cheaper, like a true wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 at this point. And if the season started tomorrow, I think we'd have to guess that he's going to be Kyler's number 2 target.
Yeah, I think right now, Rondale, the fact that his ADP hasn't moved up with these departures and hasn't really reacted, that encourages me. I think he's a player that it's a good time to be drafting him. Because even if they draft another receiver, like, his ADP is going to fall, but like, his cost isn't so exorbitant right now that it's bad. Because if they don't draft another receiver, like, his ADP is going to move up. So he's one of those guys that I'm kind of like, I have 3 buckets of players for best ball right now. Guys I'm trying to draft every time I can because I think their ADP is going to go up no matter what. Then there's guys that I'm trying to avoid right now because I think they're priced at their absolute ceiling. We talked about Trey Lance being one of those yesterday, and there's no way, like, even if there's not really any more good news that could move them up in ADP, right? And then you got those true guys that are split. Rondale Moore's one of those. where like either he could move either way, like based on what happens in the draft. And then the same, like, so he's kind of like in the Javonte Williams camp. Like if they don't do anything in the draft, they don't add Melvin Gordon, Javonte is going to move up from his already pretty expensive ADP. If they add Gordon or a running back, he's going to move down. So Rondale Moore is in that group for me. I'm very interested to see what he does. Like Cliff Kingsbury cannot ball and chain this guy to the line of scrimmage this year. Like he can't. He has to let him. Now Christian Kirk was from the slot. He operated a lot deep down the field, stretching the seam, doing different things like that. I think Rondale Moore has the skill set to be able to do that. Obviously, a lot of his tape on college is really about run after the catch stuff, but it's not all on bubble screens. I mean, come on, like let's get this guy involved. So I agree. I think the two biggest gainers so far for the Cardinals are the upside for Rondale Moore that could be there, especially at his ADP, and then James Conner. And James Conner, people are going to have we'll get into a bigger conversation about how to think about where to draft James Conner like next week as we start to probably talk through like total ranks, everything coming together. But when I look at James Conner, like you're going to have a challenge. It's like, okay, do I want to take a 27-year-old back who's definitely had, consistently been dinged like every year with some injuries, versus, a younger receiver versus someone else, because there's a legit argument, right, for trying to avoid some of these backs as they age, but he's not anywhere close to that 1,500 touch mark that we talk about from Tage. So I like Conner. I'm going to get exposure to him, but I agree that those are the two big winners.
That is the only
Hopkins
question.
Could be a low-key winner.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, too. I guess Hopkins, particularly in Dynasty, just seems to have been written off. I understand he's about to be 30 and everything, but at least for the year 2022, man, I think there's still going to be more than enough targets for the guy. We just talked about the rest of the receivers there. It should be Hopkins or bust. Now, it was a little bit concerning last year to see Hopkins not really get force-fed the ball, but, man, it was just a fairly small sample, and it was one of those things where, at least personally, I always thought like really starting to feed Hopkins was kind of the ace of spades they were holding in their back pocket. Unfortunately, he got hurt before they could really do that. But I feel like, like, come on. I've seen some people floating out the, 6 targets per game, but he got hurt against the Packers, just 15 snaps into the game, comes back the next time against the Bears. That was Kyler's first game back when he only threw like 15 passes. So again, whenever we have these, 10-game sample sizes, things can get a little bit fluky in a hurry. But it's a good point with James Conner too. We're like, yeah, I understand the allure, and he is going to be ranked really highly. And like Dalvin Cook, even though I'm, somewhat out on Dalvin, and we've talked about that, you're still going to be hard pressed to rank him outside your top 10, top 12. Difference might be we just go after the wide receiver there instead.
I think Conner and Fournette likely settle in as second-round picks, probably, I don't know, mid to late seconds. And I think it's going to be okay to mix them in those spots.
I have Lenny one spot ahead. You agree with that?
Yes, I have him 2 ahead, but just because of his, it could go either way between the two guys, but I have him 2 ahead. The thing I like with both of them is what they've shown as far as being involved in the passing game. So in PPR, I like them even more. But I think this is interesting, right? And we don't spend a lot of time on it. We can talk about this stuff more next week. But like just talking about the concept of upside and where it typically comes from. And when I look at a guy like Fournette, yeah, he's going to be 27 years old, but he doesn't have a ton of touches on him. And, as far as getting close to any sort of cutoff where we would really be concerned. And like, I think you can make an argument, right? If you're sitting there in the second round, and most likely I'm going to take CeeDee Lamb most of the time in this scenario, but if you're sitting there at the end of the second round and you could take Lamb or Fournette, I do think we at least need to embrace the fact that Lenny could actually carry more upside than CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
I mean, he was already the RB6 last year. I get it. He's in a profile where we could start to get a drop-off anytime. But we also could see CeeDee Lamb not take a huge step forward, right? That's in his range of outcomes. And I'm a proponent for Lamb, so I'm not trying to down talk Lamb here. But I just think in the Bucs offense, you got to take everything together. And then I think this goes back to James Conner. You can have the same kind of conversation about James Conner. I think, we could easily see, and I get it, you can't be a projection slave because, weird things can happen that we don't anticipate in the NFL. So talent becomes a huge part of it. But we're going to have some really good conversations because I think once you get down there in that range, like if you get to early third round, you're looking at Metcalf or Fournette, man, I think I'm probably hammering Fournette every time on that one.
If we only rank the running backs purely on rush attempts, targets, expected fantasy points, Fournette would have a case as like the RB3, man. Like it really was that ridiculous, the amount.
He has RB1 upside.
Legit overall.
Yes,
like, look,
overall.
Jonathan Taylor's 2021 was more quote unquote fluky than Leonard Fournette's, just in terms of fantasy points over expectation. That's all I'm saying. All right. I'm not telling you to draft Leonard Fournette over Jonathan Taylor. Just saying, in terms of.
And we're also proponents of the idea that certain players are going to continue to perform over expectations because they're badasses. So, and we think Jonathan Taylor's probably in that. Yes. But to your point, there's a lot of. We're only on one team. This is funny. There's a lot of flukiness that can go into the way game scripts and everything work. And Jonathan Taylor had the absolute freaking best case scenario ever on the planet last year. Like the Colts led by 4 more points, 40% of the time, 4th most in the NFL. So he lived in a lot of cushy game scripts. And if you need a reminder, look at the last week of the season when all of a sudden, like the Colts just folded against the Jaguars. What happened to the run script? What happened to the touches for Jonathan Taylor? I'm not saying that they're going to be that bad. I think Matt Ryan helps them. We'll talk about them in a minute, but just things you got to consider. So I think with Fournette, he's going to be dismissed by a lot of people just because, he's a 27-year-old running back, blah, blah, blah. Dude, in PPR, what he does in the receiving game, like it's hard to dismiss it.
We'll talk more about Jonathan Taylor and Fournette if we ever get to their team.
I don't even think we're going to have to talk about it now.
Sorry. Now moving on to the Falcons, obviously Matt Ryan, now a member of the Colts, being replaced under center by Marcus Mariota. Only really seen him once in extended action over the last 2 years. The Raiders used him as a wildcat quarterback. It was kind of weird, honestly, but somewhat effective. Anyway, the one game that he did come in, I believe against the Chargers on that Thursday night, week 15 or so, 2020, did look fantastic. Dime down the sideline to Waller. You could imagine if that was Kyle Pitts, also showing off the legs. So one of Mariota, Jameis, I mean, I think you could make a reasonable argument of them as a late round quarterback. I'll probably be leaning towards Daniel Jones, more on that a little bit later. But overall, Mariota coming in, you could at least hope that this offense could enable Kyle Pitts, who is now basically the last man standing in this wide receiver and tight end room. Russell Gage is taking his talents to the Buccaneers, leaving Olamide Zaccheaus as the last standing wide receiver one. So there is a ton of work to be done at wide receiver and not tight end. They have Kyle Pitts, but just at wide receiver in this offense. At running back, my guy, the great, the legend, Cordero Patterson is back. Best case scenario. Again, him, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Rashad Penny, these running backs coming back to their original teams, I think was always their number one potential scenario in fantasy football land, at least, should continue to have Cordero. I would hope, now that he's had a full offseason off the high ankle sprain, don't forget to mention that. You first half, second half splitsters out there. So I think next year we can expect him to be back into that really fantasy-friendly first half of the season role. 60% snaps, hopefully, with all the receptions and carries he can handle. Behind him, probably Damian Williams or Mike Davis, maybe Quadri Allison. Maybe they split it. Don't really expect any of those backup RBs to have much of a usable role. So, Dwayne, I guess the question is, we know we have CPAT. We know we have Kyle Pitts. Do we care about anyone else here? Are you drinking the Mariota Kool-Aid, or we just kind of need to wait and see what wide receiver ends up being drafted here?
Yeah, I think there's a lot left to happen for the Falcons. You got 2 first-round picks. You got pick 8. You got pick 12. You've got 2 picks in the 3rd. Ooh. In the 2nd round, they've got, I think they only have their 1 selection in the 3rd. They've got the 58th pick overall. No, they have 2 in the 2nd as well. They've got the 43rd and 58th. So they've got multiple picks in the first 3 rounds, and they're gonna do something here. So they're a team that we're gonna have to come back and revisit. As far as Mariota goes, I'm fine with taking a stab on a guy like Mariota late. Just realize that he's never truly lived up to that rushing profile that we saw at Oregon. He just hasn't done the same thing in the NFL. So typically, quarterbacks who get at least 500 yards in a season rushing, which is really, that's what you're looking for. You have some guys that can add 250, 300, right? The Tannehills, and that's nice. Aaron Rodgers used to do that. But really, if you're going to talk about, you want the upside of a rushing quarterback, you want to be able to hit that 500 yards rushing benchmark. And since 2011, the quarterbacks that have done that have averaged overall 23% of their team's rushing attempts. Now that takes scrambles plus design runs, right? And so design rushing attempts, 15%, scrambles per drop back, 9%. Mariota from 2015 to 2019 never came close to any of those things. 11% of his team's rushing share overall. 6%. Now he missed a few games, and I didn't adjust for that, so there's a little bit of that going on here. But overall, these numbers are just too low. 6% of the team's design rushing attempts, and that includes some games with Arthur Smith, right? So 5% scramble per drop back. So he's just below. He doesn't do any of these things enough. Not saying he doesn't have the ability, but no team has truly unleashed him and allowed him to really do that. Or is it just he doesn't want to do it? I don't know. But what I know is we've got a decent sample size and he's never done it. So I don't know that he carries as much rushing upside as folks think. Now, having said that, his ADP is super cheap. So if he flips the switch on and he does it this year, great. That's going to help you. And I mean, he could end up having some value as a fantasy quarterback, especially like in a super flex leagues. I could understand Mariota as your QB3 type of a thought line.
It really was ridiculous how the Raiders used him last year. I mean, he had 13 rush attempts, just 2 pass attempts on the entire season, and teams still couldn't stop it.
And I didn't include the last 2 years just because like they were only putting him out there to do that. So yeah.
Like I say, he only had 1 extended appearance, but I just remember Thanksgiving against the Cowboys. Like, yeah, guys, Mariota, it's going to be a read option, but go score a touchdown anyway, I guess. So, yeah, that's basically on the Falcons right now. Again, we're going to go back there once they kind of.
Hey, real quick on you. I know we'll talk these more next week, but like, and this kind of goes back to my overarching zoom out. Like, I've been a proponent the last several years of tight end early. Get your stud early if you can. Like, it's a good strategy.
I don't know about this year though, Dwayne.
I don't either, man. I don't either. And Kyle Pitts has questions now. Like, Mariota scares me. I get it. He's the only thing in the offense, and he did enough as a rookie. PFF receiving grade of 81.6, yards per route run 2.02. Those are great for a rookie tight end. So no doubt that Kyle Pitts is talented and he's going to be good. But man, just enough concerns. Like,
they all have pushes now at the top.
That's the point. That's the point. And his ADP is 28 overall right now on Underdog. So I think I feel just as good about, honestly, Kyle Hawkinson or TJ Hawkinson, like going. Kyle Hawkinson is an old classmate.
I was like, is that a prospect I don't know of yet?
Yeah, his name was Hoskison. But anyway, I don't know where that came from. But anyway, TJ Hawkinson, like, you can get him way later. That's the thing. Like, I don't know that some of these guys are going to be worth taking in the 2nd or 3rd round when you can get another similar player in the 7th round. And we'll talk about other late round guys as we go. But I'm a little I'm starting to. That's where I'm heading right now in my thought process for 2022 draft plans. Like, I don't think I'm going to invest a lot at the top. I'm going to get some Kelsey, but the hitting age 33 also worries me with him.
We talked about Kelsey, during the big Tyreek episode yesterday. Mark Andrews, you can kind of look at his splits with Lamar, and also just one of those situations where maybe he just had such a great damn season. It's going to be tough for him to necessarily replicate that because he was that damn good. Darren Waller now having to share the offense with Devontae Adams. George Kittle having to make the switch to Trey Lance under center. Yeah, man, like, spare me the early ones. I'll either get a mid guy or go just dip my toe into the late round waters, 2 or 3 times. So we'll keep that in mind. Moving right along, though, we are going to talk about Mark Andrews and company, the Baltimore Ravens. Not too much was going on here, at least from an offensive perspective. Obviously, they had a lot of injuries in the preseason last year that put them behind the 8 ball at running back, but we should have J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards back to, at least, be a nice 1-2 punch behind Lamar Jackson. So Sammy Watkins remains an unrestricted free agent. Hopefully he can at least sign somewhere for week 1 and week 1 alone. Otherwise, no real changes at wide receiver. Should continue to be Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman, and Devin Duvernay. But losing Watkins really does help Bateman. You could argue, like, if Watkins is the reason why Bateman wasn't going to break out, maybe he never was. But, he is I'm not surprised the Ravens were kind of keeping their incumbent veteran starter ahead of the rook just for a little bit. Otherwise, man, that's really almost it. Kudos to the Ravens for getting Tyler Huntley re-signed again. If Lamar happens to go down, we can legitimately trust Huntley as a nice little streaming option thanks to his rushing upside. Dwayne, again, not too many changes to the overall passing game. How about a running back, though? J.K. Dobbins, someone that I don't think either of us were super high on going into last season, just because of the expectation that, 1, obviously Lamar is going to continue to soak up all of his rush attempts, and 2, Gus Edwards was sneakily plenty involved in his own right. So, Ravens, I'm sure once August comes around, we're going to be hearing about Dobbins getting more involved in the pass game like they tell us every single year. Maybe it'll be true, maybe not. Where are you landing on Dobbins right now?
Yeah, I think right now, look, he fits the definition of a running back that's going to go in the dead zone that we still like because he's a younger back, and he's still got upside, right? But there are blockers. Like, he is in a run heavy offense, but Lamar Jackson's going to get his. And Gus Edwards, people can't forget, like, Gus Edwards got re-signed to a nice deal last offseason. And so Gus Edwards right now His ADP on Underdog is 157. Dobbins is 44. So, I mean, to be honest, like I'm kind of like, oh, give me Gus Edwards, just, and I really do like J.K. Dobbins. I think he's a good player. So I'm not trying to bash on him or anything like that. I'm good with J.K. Dobbins. I'm probably not going to have a ton of exposure though. Just, I don't see them changing, Ian. I see them probably continuing, to rotate these guys. And I'm all about, okay, great, buy into variance. You got to be okay with it. I don't know that I want to buy into a bunch of variance in round 4. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you have to. There's going to be receivers that are going to be available that they're going to profile upside like just as good as J.K. Dobbins with less downside and a better median projection. So that's going to be the problem for J.K. Dobbins.
Dwain has J.K. Dobbins RB24. I'm a little higher at RB21, but yeah, I have a feeling that, if you're really in on J.K. Dobbins this year, people are going to have him well inside of even that number. It's more so just what's going to happen in that offense. Like the chances of J.K. Dobbins flirting with 300 plus, combined targets and carries, just much more slim than a lot of these other running backs we're going to rank ahead of him. After the Ravens, we have the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, had the J.D. McKissick fiasco where we thought he was going to join them, ended up not, and that paved the way for Duke Johnson to come in, maybe be their scat back, maybe even fight Singletary for a few early down reps. Ultimately, he's probably not going to be. I can almost guarantee you he won't be fantasy viable. Hopefully, Devin Singletary is able to hold on to that job, but that's something we're just going to kind of need to track throughout the offseason and into the preseason, because if they go ahead and just give Singletary that every down roll again, my goodness, he is going to be awfully viable. And Dwain, if we sat here and we just said, hey, for Devin Singletary, the only guy they're going to add the entire offseason is Duke Johnson, we'd feel pretty good about that for projecting it forward. So, Singletary is someone where if he is going to be especially falling, because I don't think anyone's going to rank him too much higher than kind of from that RB20 to RB24 range, best case. But if that's kind of the point where everyone that's been loading up on running backs starts going to wide receivers, and we can see Singletary, really start slipping in the rounds, he could be someone that I'd be willing to get back into, as early as like round 6 or something like that. So wide receiver room also went under a bit of a makeover. Cole Beasley has been released. Manuel Sanders still unsigned. Now we're looking at Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis on the outside with Isaiah McKenzie and ex-Jets, ex-Washington receiver Jamison Crowder. So, Dwain, I'm not sure your exact thoughts on how this is going to go down at wide receiver. To me, Gabriel Davis is the biggest winner, assuming they don't add a high round draft pick. So Crowder and McKenzie, I kind of think they'll split in a similar manner as McKenzie and Beasley did towards the end of last year, essentially canceling each other out. But Gabriel Davis, man, I think we've almost... It went so far one way after the 200 yards and 4 touchdowns in the AFC divisional, just incredible game against the Chiefs. It went so far that way. There were people thinking he was almost going to be overvalued. So high in him right now. But now, everything that's happened in the offseason has been a positive for Gabe Davis. It's not a given that they're going to draft one of these receivers in the first round or two. Even if they do, maybe it is. Maybe they are the next Gabe Davis, and they have to wait their turn on the bench for a few years. Dwain, I think I have Gabriel Davis as like my wide receiver 36 right now or so, and I'm seeing him even kind of lower throughout the industry. Where do you fall on him? Because we've seen Josh Allen enable, Smokey Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, in addition to Diggs. Now, there's been some injuries there to muddle that up, but it's looking like Gabriel Davis might be here to stay.
Yeah, I've got Gabe Davis right now at 50, but it's because, right now, if people are drafting, there's no way I would draft Gabriel Davis. I think you're buying Gabriel Davis at peak ADP right now. If we get through the draft and they do not add another receiver, I'll be closer in alignment with where you have him. Right now,
he's 30. Geez, he's got an ADP wide receiver 32. All right, chill the hell out, everyone. My God.
See, so right now, is not the time to be drafted. If you're a best ball drafter and you're we've already talked to you. You can go back and listen to our episode about when are the best times to draft and why, and when to not draft. You're actually in a window where it can be good to draft, but there's certain players you should be avoiding, and Gabriel Davis is one of those. Just because, think about it, if the Bills don't. Here's the way my thought process works. You tell me what you think, Ian. So if the Bills don't add and do not draft a receiver in the first 3 rounds, fine. They could draft a 5th or 6th. Who cares? That's not going to impact Gabriel Davis. But if they don't draft a receiver in the first 3 rounds, I don't think it changes Gabriel Davis's ADP. I think he's going to stay about right where he is. I don't think people are going to push him higher than a mid-tier wide receiver 3. But if they draft another receiver in the first round or second round, I guarantee you Gabriel Davis falls 10 to 15 spots. He's going to fall. And so if you want exposure, he could still be the right answer. Like he could still be, I want to have exposure to Gabriel Davis because I think he's going to have a big season. Like somebody could say that to me and I could say, hey, I get it. Like I'm not all in on Gabriel Davis, but if I could get an ADP, 15 spots below that, I would feel a lot better about drafting and getting a little bit of exposure to Gabriel Davis. He could fall even more than that. If they draft a receiver in the first round, he'll fall more than that. That's my projection. I bet he falls 2 to 3 rounds if they draft a receiver in the first round, maybe more.
Also, just while I see him on the screen, Adam Thielen sitting there, wide receiver 36. We got to talk about him, Dwayne. Hayden Winks gave me some good thoughts on Adam Thielen. When we're looking at these guys, and I think James Conner's another one, a good question to ask yourself is, if week 1 was tomorrow, where would we rank them just for week 1? I think Thielen's someone that you can see would have an awfully big jump. And then it's like, well, why are we ranking this guy down so low in the first place? But we'll save that for the Vikings. But yeah, Josh.
Again, remember, like there's seasons of drafting. So even though you may be doing best ball, a lot of people right now are in dynasty mindset, and we see this every year. So younger players are pushed up in earlier drafts. Then, the draft happens and people start doing their projections and you start truly focusing on week 1 and you see things start to level out more. So depending on when you're drafting, like that's another thing a macro thing that you can keep in your mind of, okay, I want to attack these certain types of players because I think they've got a lower ADP right now or a higher ADP right now. And so that is definitely something. When everybody's in dynasty mode, a lot of these younger players that are on teams like Gabe Davis versus Adam Thielen, these sort of things happen in the ADPs.
OJ Howard also was signed to maybe complement Dawson Knox, maybe be a pure backup. Dawson Knox is starting to shake out. Maybe this year's Robert Tonyan, just a guy that had such a good year last season, but a lot of it was on, high volume of touchdowns on a lower volume of targets. Dwayne, Knox is someone that, man, if he's going to be, going in that top 10, top 8 range over guys like a Dalton Schultz, Rob Gronkowski, maybe even Albert O, it's going to be tough to get behind him, man. Every single kind of regression stat that we like to trust is telling us that Dawson Knox is probably going to have a downturn in 2022.
Right. I mean, look, and this isn't against the player, but Dawson Knox just is not, he hasn't done anything. Like he's had 3 years. He's never done anything from targets per route run, never done anything on yards per route run, never done anything on PFF receiving grade. Like he's the opposite of Albert, like he's the opposite, right? So I'm much more likely to take an Albert O, someone like that I think's got that higher ceiling profile. I think Dawson Knox, what carried him, you played on one of the pass heaviest teams in the league. And so even though you were only targeted, 11% of the time or whatever it was last year, you happen to come through. That profile, that's a very fragile profile. Like he could lose those targets to someone else. They could throw the ball less. Like he's really just depending on, living off of basically the exhaust fumes of the Bills offense, like in my opinion. So I'm not going to have much Dawson Knox at all.
Moving right along to the Carolina Panthers, one of the biggest losers, I would say, of the offseason, just based on the fact that, once again, it's looking like Sam Darnold is going to be their week 1 starter. Maybe they still go out and get Jimmy G. I would really hope they look for a quarterback in the draft this time around. Just saying, as of right now, it does look like it would be Sammy D. Cam Newton remains an unrestricted free agent. Phillip Walker was re-signed to be the backup again. We will see what else happens at quarterback. Christian McCaffrey still the RB1, in my opinion, the overall RB1 in fantasy land. Keep in mind, we might have a nice handcuff opportunity here, though, because last year, Chuba Hubbard took that job, was given a lot of opportunities at first, really didn't do anything with him. By the end of the year, Amir Abdullah was not only taking the pass down work, but man, he was just starting to kind of take over a period by the time week 18 came along. But Amir Abdullah is gone, and they went ahead and gave Deontay Foreman, I believe, a 1-year, $3 million deal. So Deontay Foreman, man, I've thought of, worst late round, maybe even last round picks, because if something happens, if you're of the opinion that McCaffrey is now injury prone, he's never going to be healthy again, you should be looking hard and long at Deontay Foreman later in these drafts. At wide receiver, DJ Moore extension. My God, free DJ Moore. Now that Terry McLaurin, this feels bad to say. I guess it's still a competition between DJ Moore and Terry McLaurin. Allen Robinson now gets to play with Matthew Stafford. Cortland Sutton now gets to play with Russell Wilson. But my God, DJ Moore and Terry McLaurin's quarterbacks, absolutely brutal. And more, you can even go back to the Maryland Terrapins days, and it gets even grosser. So please, for the love of God, at some point, get DJ Moore a quarterback. Behind him, it's still looking like Robbie Anderson, wide receiver 2. Maybe he actually can provide some of that, I don't think we're going to get that wide receiver 2 season again that we saw actually in 2020, but the disparity between Moore and Robbie is going to be so big again. It's going to be hard not to call Robbie a value. Beyond that, Dwayne, I think we have a lot of nothing because they brought back Ian Thomas on one of free agency's weirder deals, essentially eliminating our guy Tommy Trembles from the equation. And at the wide receiver 3 spot, you would like to think Terrence Marshall can turn it around, but he's got to beat out Brandon Zylstra, who took his job last year, and now Rashard Higgins is also in the picture. So I think right now, Dwayne, it's we know we have McCaffrey as, okay, RB1, RB2, RB3, whatever. Where do you fall on DJ Moore, though? Because he has overcome, to an extent, all these shitty quarterback situations, but it's not exactly getting better. And it's just one of those things where if you do look at Moore versus Robbie, it's not exactly a given that Moore is going to be the clear-cut target leader.
Right. Well, I do think DJ Moore will be the target leader.
I do too, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, though. I get it. I think last year we saw, them adapt the way they used DJ Moore versus the year before, which we had this weird, bizarro thing where DJ Moore the year before was the down the field target in 2020. And we all were thinking, wow, DJ Moore should be the intermediate and underneath guy with the occasional look down the field, get this guy the ball. And you had Robbie Anderson running 5 yard. Dude, Robbie Anderson weighs 180 pounds. Get that guy out of there. He's going to die. So I think they're set in what we're going to see from the offense. So I feel good about DJ Moore gets targets. It's just, man, what's a target from Sam Darnold worth? Not much, Ian. It's not worth much. So, look, DJ Moore is living on his talent. I've got him at wide receiver 16 right now, probably closer. That's probably where I need to have DK Metcalf closer to as well, to be honest. We talked about him yesterday. So I still like him because of his talent, but man, goodness, what are they going to do? And they don't have a lot of picks. They got the number 6 pick overall. They're probably going to force a quarterback. So we'll wait and see. But no second round picks, no third round picks. So I think we're pretty set in what we're going to see as far as the skill positions and who's going to be playing where. We'll see if Terrace Marshall can make a rebound. In the study that we looked at a few weeks ago, looking at the PFF receiving grades, in the first year, Terrace Marshall graded at the very bottom. We've not seen very many players at all recover from the first type of season that he had. So not super excited about Marshall, but I think we can pretty much. This is a team you could project today. As far as all the skill position players and kind of what you think about target shares and everything, and you're probably not going to have to change much. It's really going to be the quality of the target that's going to change. And to be honest, with these quarterbacks, Ian, that are available in this draft, I don't know that any one of them, they may give me a little bit more hope than Sam Darnold, but Malik Willis, if they take him and they're going to start him, I'm not excited about that passing game. Yeah. Kenny Pickett, overrated. We like Matt Corral, but come on, a rookie. Matt Corral, in most drafts, wouldn't be a first round pick. And so
I think we all like Trevor Lawrence too, but look how that worked out.
Exactly. He's the 1-1. So I'm concerned. I don't think there's a lot of upside anywhere to be found unless Carolina pulls, a rabbit out of their what did I got to go with the Jason Witten?
It's a rabbit out of their head.
Got to pull a rabbit out of their head and make some sort of a trade, for a quarterback that could come in and really take over and make things happen. It's tough to see any sort of light that's going to change this situation and make it a lot more positive for me right now.
Let's talk another awfully mid free agency period team, the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields, the QB1 this year. We don't have to deal with the Andy Dalton QB1 tweet this time around in March, but Allen Robinson has taken his talents to the Los Angeles Rams, will now be playing with the best quarterback of his career, and the Bears just decided not really replace him. We got Equanimeous St. Brown from the Packers. We got Byron Pringle from the Chiefs. I have my doubts that, they weren't able to figure it out with Aaron Rodgers and Mahomes, but are magically going to kill it in Chicago. But as of right now, they do project to join Darnell Mooney in 3 wide receiver sets. At tight end, Jimmy Graham and his no trade clause remain on the open market. Jesse James, JP Holtz also there. Looking like Cole Kmet will be the every down tight end. Remember, though, it is a new coaching staff, so we can't exactly be sure on that. I'm the late round tight end group, Dwayne. I'm not against Kmet, but seems like he's getting a lot of benefit of the doubt over some other guys that I think are in as good of a situation, arguably. So if Komet's going to randomly be like tight end 13 while Irv Smith is tight end 18, I'm probably just going to let someone else take Komet a couple rounds ahead. And at running back, I guess this would be kind of the most, we can talk about some Darnell Mooney in running back because David Montgomery is still shaping up as the featured back. Damian Williams out of the picture. The only real addition they made was adding Darrington Evans, who might not even, make the team in week 1. So what I was kind of finding in some of these underdog drafts is that Khalil Herbert is basically like a discount Alexander Madison, who's already kind of discounted right now. Like Khalil Herbert, as we saw last year, comes in, freaking terrorizes the Buccaneers of all run defenses. Like every single watch the film checkbox you want to have with Herbert, he passed it. And similar to, I think, what Madison has in Minnesota, Madison, Herbert, they're both A-plus handcuffs. If Montgomery or Cook goes down, we're looking at every backs that are proven, every single down they can play. They're probably going to be ranked as RB1s. In Madison's case, absolutely would be. And they both have new coaching staffs where maybe we do just see more of a committee. Tariq Cohen's out of the picture as well in Chicago. So perhaps they lean on Herbert on pass down. So, Dwayne, I don't really think Montgomery necessarily is going to be getting that 80% snap roll. Maybe we should, based on some of the new Bears coach. I was looking kind of through the coaching Wikipedias and, we got, I believe it was experience with the Packers on there where it's just like, okay, we've kind of seen those Packers committees over the years. To me, I'm not so much high on Montgomery, but I love Khalil Herbert in the back spot of drafts. And Darnell Mooney is someone that we need to just keep an eye on because as you start going down the wide receiver ranks, it's like, do I want this number 2 or number 3 receiver in this offense? Or, hey, there's Darnell Mooney, still his team's undisputed number 1 pass game option.
Yeah, I actually like Montgomery this year. I avoided him last year. I mean, he's got basically the same ADP, a little bit lower. His ADP is a little bit lower than what it was last year. And we don't have to worry about Tariq Cohen. At this time last year, we still thought there was we didn't know Tariq Cohen was going to miss the whole year. And they had added Damian Williams, who had proven to be a solid pass catching back. So the one thing with Herbert, he is not really a pass catching back. At least he hasn't been so far. It's not something that he's really shown. So I don't want to say he can't ever do it, but they seem to really prefer Montgomery in that role. Where I see Khalil Herbert, stepping in is probably giving him a breather every third or fourth drive on early downs. So I still think Montgomery can be around that 70% mark, and I think he could get to 80. I'm with you based on the coaching staff. Probably something, I think 70% though is going to be reasonable. Yep. I think David Montgomery is going to be a value. Like he's a guy I'm not going to be calling a dead zone back that I'm avoiding. He is a replaceable player. I'm not saying David Montgomery's a great player, but he's only 25, and his PFF pass blocking grade, 76.6, really good for a running back. PFF receiving grade, 69.2, really good, not elite, but good for a running back. Now, as far as on the ground, like Khalil Herbert, to your point, outperformed him, 84.4 PFF rush grade versus 67.7 for Montgomery. But Montgomery did, battle through some injuries. What running back doesn't, I guess. We probably don't even need to say that. But I think with Montgomery, it's just the PPR profile that he has. Despite, he's not really an explosive player. I think he's a solid player. He's a volume player. I think if there's a year that you could see David Montgomery end up, in the top 7 or 8 backs just on volume alone, this is probably the year. And I like the age, 25 years old. I like the ADP as well at 42.
Dude, where's Herbert?
But totally agree on Herbert. I love him as a late round lotto pick. Like what we saw from him, I can go, I've watched him actually some this offseason. It's fun to watch Khalil Herbert.
Like he's going behind guys like Gus Edwards, Kenneth Gainwell, James Robinson, who we're going to talk about, who I just don't think have the same sort of best case scenario, outcome. So I see Madison.
I'm with you. I think he should go. We talked about this yesterday. A game I like to play when I'm looking at these ranks and ADPs. Like you're just looking for the thing that looks like this. Basically, a lot of people like Rich Rebar will call this arbitrage, right? This commodity essentially profiles similar to these other commodities that are going way ahead. Like it should probably be in the same tier. And I think the example you gave with Alexander Madison is a really good one. I think that's what people should be thinking about with Khalil Herbert. You're getting a discounted Alexander Madison. That's a great round to have in the chamber late in the season. If all of a sudden Montgomery goes down, you're going to get RB1 performances out of Khalil Herbert. Let's see what they do in the draft. But right now, you're going to get RB1 performances.
Darnell Mooney looking good. We'll see how that situation is kind of looking, after the draft and stuff too, because if there is a team that still needs to add some firepower to the offense, like let's make it the Bears. I understand, like I was saying this on Twitter, like it'd be a lot cooler if the Bears actually got Fields, one of these, high price receivers that's floating out there. And everyone was quick to say, what do you do with Allen Robinson? We can't do this. We're not pulling the Baker Browns. Oh, you can't surround them with good receivers because it didn't work out one time type of thing. So not comparing Fields to Baker Mayfield. I would never do that. Just saying, it's legal in the year 2022 to have more than one great wide receiver. And that's a compliment towards Darnell Mooney. Keep that in mind, Bears fans.
The only thing going against Mooney is his draft capital. And I think we're 2 years in. Like, I get it. These kind of players have popped up and then they'll disappear. He's a 5th round pick, 173 overall. You just don't see that profile be that, successful that often. But I mean, his PFF receiving grade was in that second group that we talked about.
There's a lot of hits in there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of hits in there. Now, a lot of them are earlier round picks, but there's definitely been some later round guys. I mean, look, what else do you want from Mooney? He's a 5th round pick. He's already given you PPR seasons of 150 and 220 points, ranking 49th and 23rd. To me, he's a young player. Is he going to be a target hog? Probably not. But, could he see 25%, of the targets? Last year, he saw 23%. He saw 25% last year. He probably is. He's probably going to see 25% again. Do I think he's going to jump to 30? Probably not. But it's in the range of outcomes. I mean, he's made a step forward each year.
Hey, injuries were on the table for Robinson last year. With that said, Mooney was the Bears' best wide receiver. They were in the same situation, had to deal with the same factors. Just something to keep in mind. Moving on, Cincinnati Bengals, obviously Joe Burrow, quarterback of today and of the next decade plus. Running backs remain Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine, Chris Evans. Not expecting too much of a change up there. Really, tight end is the only room that changed because wide receiver, we once again have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd in 3 wide receiver sets. Auden Tate remains an unrestricted free agent. Think about the possibilities, Dwayne. Auden Tate, Packers wide receiver 1. I don't know, just throwing it out there. We'll see where my guy Auden lands. The one room to talk about is tight end. CJ Uzomah took his talents to the New York Jets. Nice big contract for him. Hayden Hurst now comes from the Falcons. So Hayden Hurst, someone who actually made my Jameis Winston All-Star team a couple years ago because he was a legitimately okay to good receiver, but he was one of our worst run blockers we graded at the position. And not only that, but he would have a couple good games. It was one of those guys where he was never on the tight end 1 really map. Some people, I guess, try to just replace.
He was for the Ravens at one point, but yeah.
Right. Well, he would. It's in fantasy land, at least with the Falcons. It took him a couple weeks to earn the trust of everyone, and then once he did, he would goose egg, and then he'd earn their trust back, and then he'd goose egg again. So he just was a super volatile fantasy option that also in real life was far better receiving than blocking. Accordingly, they drafted Kyle Pitts and used him as a pure backup last year. So
he's also a great trivia question to use with your friends. Hayden Hurst is older than. Most players, he's already 29. He's going to be 29 this year.
That's absolutely ridiculous. Well, they did go ahead and re-sign some of the other backup tight ends, Mitchell Wilcox and Thaddeus Moss. Drew Sample, remains there. I guess the question is, Dwayne, do we care about Hayden Hurst? We saw CJ Uzomah last year. I think he was the tight end 18 in fantasy points per game, tight end 21 overall. And I thought he had a decent year, all things considered, but he's always the tight end in this offense is going to be the number 4, number 5 guy. With that said, we just kind of saw what Dawson Knox did. We saw what Robert Tonyan did the year before. Could Hayden Hurst just be that full-time tight end in a great offense? The quarterback throws for 40-plus touchdowns, and all of a sudden, we're looking at it in week 8, and it's why didn't we take a chance on the fairly receiving-friendly tight end with Joe freaking Burrow throwing them the ball?
He actually profiles, just from a utilization standpoint, really similar to CJ Uzomah. Okay. So I think, yes, I think that's in the range of outcomes. We'll see what people do with his ADP. Do they get excited? Because, people, a lot of times it's the recency bias is strong. It's oh, well, look what Uzomah did. We would be fine using him. I mean, he's obviously not going to move that much up in ADP, but I think as a late round guy, especially in a deeper draft, in thinking of him as a potential option I love him in best ball. I'm never going to know when to start Hayden Hurst in a season-long league. Basically everyone else will have to be hurt. And I'll be well, guess I'll put Hayden Hurst in and hope this works out. But in a best ball scenario, I think Hayden Hurst, yes, could give you those spike weeks. where he ends up doing what Uzomah did. Now, he's never had that. Now, Uzomah did always have that underlying athletic profile, but I think sometimes we overrate that athletic profile as players get older, right? Uzomah doesn't run the same speed, I promise you guys, like that he ran like at his 40 combine. Like, he's an older player too. So when you look at a guy like Hayden Hurst, he didn't quite profile the same way, but we've seen tight ends as they get older. It's really more about, hey, understanding the way the zones work, all those sort of things. The quarterback trusts you. I think Hayden Hurst can do that. So I think that's a good call on your part.
By the way, shout out overthecap.com, who we've been showing, the free agents and all that here for you.
Hey, I think the other big thing here too, Ian, is just really the offensive line. Like, the biggest thing for me is offensive line improvements for Joe Burrow. They had major problems at guard last year. 2 years ago, they drafted a tackle in the first round with Jonah Williams. But the guard play was just really terrible last year. So we saw a big upgrade for the Bengals. And if you look at Joe Burrow, what was the major problem? Taking too many sacks last year. Yeah. And he was overcoming them, like at a rate that wasn't sustainable, to be honest. So now, like, if you can keep the offense more on schedule, stop negative. Look, sacks are almost as detrimental to you as a football team as an interception. Like, they are huge swings as far as what your expected points added on a drive look like when you take a sack. So I expect to see far less sacks on Joe Burrow this year, more time for him to survey the field, find those weapons. Because you can see Burrow's got that gunslinger mentality. He may not have the arm of a Brett Favre, but he doesn't want to settle. Like, he's going to hang on, and he's going to look, and he's going to give his guys time so that he can try to make a big play down the field. And so I think you're going to see more of those things work out for him this season, which is great overall for the whole offense.
I think one of the biggest holes in fantasy football as a game is that sacks don't mean anything half the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's a huge part of any game. Like, how many plays, like, it's not an incomplete pass. Like, it matters, like, this should not be one of the statistics that leads to absolutely no points. I'm not saying it should be, equivalent to an interception, but like minus 0.5 per sack, that would kind of make sense to me. I've had some people ask me in the offseason, like, how could we fix fantasy football to make, rushing quarterbacks like less great? Like, how could we make Jalen Hurts like be not a star in fantasy, whereas, in real life, he's an average to probably below average quarterback, at least relative to the other starters in the league. And I thought adding sacks into the equation would help that. Now, then you would also have some, pocket passers who don't run and they take a lot of sacks, and it'd be kind of spitting on their fantasy grave, for lack of a better example.
But no, I agree. I like those ideas. Like, and we've tried to incorporate those into like some of the home leagues that I play, and like different roles and tweaking scoring by position, to make things more equal. And Scott Fish does a great job of looking at stuff like that for the Fishbowl. So Scott Fishbowl, if you guys haven't played in it, like, trying to get into that, like, it's a great format. And I love it because it's also cool because everybody has to adjust to all the rules. Like, it's not just something you're used to. You're like, okay, well, what does this mean? Like, I got to think about these sacks now. I got to think about first down, stuff like that. So
Cleveland Browns staying inside the AFC North. Obviously, biggest move of free agency was the trade for Deshaun Watson. Now, it's inevitable he's going to be suspended. We don't know for how long. Once we do know, then we'll be immediately able to kind of make some takeaways for it. But when Deshaun Watson is under center, we are expecting him to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback and a top 10 at a minimum real life signal caller. When he's not under center, it will not be Case Keenum. It will actually be Jacoby Brissett, assuming that Baker's not going to stick around and be the backup. I would be shocked if he is even given that opportunity. We also have Nick Mullins hanging around as an unrestricted free agent, but it sure seems like Jacoby will be that guy. And hey, I know for Underdog right now, their big contest is actually super flex. So Jacoby Brissett at the end of these drafts, you're getting a handful of games to start the year. Who knows? Maybe Watson, maybe the NFL tries to, get a grip on some of this backlash. I wouldn't think a full season suspension is on the table. I'm just saying, if you want to try to take down this tournament, Jacoby Brissett is actually, looking like he's going to have like a far higher number of starts than the guys that are going ahead of him. That's all I'm trying to say. Don't sell your soul to get Jacoby Brissett on your fantasy team. Just something to keep in mind for these tournaments. Running back will continue to be Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They did bring back Ernest Johnson. He was only an exclusive rights free agent, though, so it wasn't too hard. At wide receiver, they traded for Amari Cooper to basically replace each of Jarvis Landry, still a free agent. Rashard Higgins signed with the Panthers, and obviously Odell Beckham Jr. Was never a part of the team after about week 7 last year. So Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, probably Anthony Schwartz and 3 wide receiver sets right now. Yes, they will be adding to the position in the draft. Tight end, probably our biggest kind of takeaway right now, because Austin Hooper got cut, went ahead and went to Tennessee, leaving us with David Njoku and Harrison Bryant to start. Dwain, had someone bring an old tweet of mine from, I think it was like May 2020 to the table, where, Nostra Ian over here said that David Njoku catches 10 touchdowns from Deshaun Watson if they ever got to link up together. Now, I was thinking the Browns could trade David Njoku because he's been dangled in trade talks for the last 3 years, but now they franchised him. Now he's apparently tight end 1 in Cleveland. I was thinking that would be him in Houston as the full-time tight end, as we saw last year. And really the last 2 years, we haven't had a full-time tight end in Cleveland. Austin Hooper wasn't. Njoku hasn't been. Bryant hasn't been. Is the David Njoku hype getting a little too high, Dwain, particularly considering we're not going to have the quarterback that we're really getting hyped about anyway for what? I would guess 6 games is a reasonable guess.
Yeah, and here's the problem with the Deshaun Watson stuff. I don't see, there's no incentive for the league to hurry up and make their mind.
Yeah. They've been getting blasted on this. And now with them giving him, to me, the slimiest thing of the whole ordeal is the $1 million he's getting paid for 2021.
Yeah.
For 2022.
That sent people over the edge for sure. And rightfully so. I get it. I think so here's the deal. There's a chance he's suspended the whole year. It's in the range of outcomes for Watson. I was actually thinking about this some yesterday. And for the league, what incentive do they have to hurry up? Because I think they just want to get as much information as they can. The last thing you want to do is give him, either way, too short of a suspension, and then all of a sudden this other news all breaks and you're like, holy crap, how do we reel this back in? We should have suspended him longer. And then there's the opposite side, right? You go ahead and suspend him for a year now, and then all this other evidence comes out that, he didn't do something. Right. So I think they're only going to wait. I think they're going to wait as far as they can. Maybe we'll get tidbits of information, I'm sure, along the way, as we hear about the cases play out. But I don't think the NFL is going to give us any inclination of what they're doing. We're not going to know anything about what the NFL is thinking until they do it. And I think they will wait as long as they could. It could linger on deep into training camp, depending on, I don't know what the schedule looks like for a lot of the legal stuff. So I haven't studied any of that. But I think if you're going to roll with Deshaun Watson, I think you just got to accept it, that you're just accepting that in that portion of your portfolio where you're drafting him, especially in best ball. You're essentially saying, look, if this works out to the positive, I'm going to get value out of it. If it doesn't, I'm not. And this team's probably dead. Yeah. So it's just, that's the way you got to think about it, in my opinion. So I think we're going to be probably left dangling for quite a time. As far as just the Browns overall, I think the pecking order that you laid out is probably right. I think you got Amari Cooper 1, David Njoku 2, Donovan Peoples-Jones 3. We'll see. They do have their draft picks real quick. They don't have a first round pick, but the Browns do have pick 44 in the second round. So that's round 2, overall pick 44. And then they've got 2 picks in the third. So pick 78 overall and then pick 99. And then they've got a 118 in the fourth. But those first 3 picks, they could easily spend one of those on adding another weapon, right, for Watson. I think they have to. I think you've got to add another receiver. So I think pick 44 could easily be a receiver. There's some other things they could do with it. But one of those first 3 picks likely is a wide receiver, if I had to guess, just because Schwartz showed so little. Not to say he couldn't come do something this year. Didn't really have a lot of playing time, though. So when you can't get your way onto the field, that's a bit of a red flag in itself. Didn't have enough routes for me to really grade him as far as looking at the PFF grades, though.
I think a lot of people were shocked when he went as high as he did.
Yes.
The perception, I believe, was a kind of a one-trick pony, just speed guy, and I'm not so sure he's going to be able to add the sort of nuance he needs to, be a big fantasy factor in 2022. Nick Chubb, is he someone that you moved up much with the Deshaun Watson news? I feel like the Nick Chubb problem is the same as it's always been. The Browns refuse to give him the ball, and now, honestly, like we mentioned, D'Ernest Johnson coming back, there's nothing more annoying than that game last year. I think it was against Pittsburgh, where the Browns were technically still in it. We all kind of saw the writing on the wall, but Kareem Hunt was out. Nick Chubb was in there. The Browns go down, and D'Ernest Johnson was playing ahead of Nick Chubb, and Troy Aikman was losing his damn mind about him being on the sideline. Maybe it was someone else, but that's what it is, Dwayne. It's Nick Chubb is like Derrick Henry. He's an absolute monster of an early down back, and his team refuses to throw him the ball, despite him, again, not being Christian McCaffrey by any stretch, but being capable enough. So I have him right now, RB13. I believe you have him the same. I probably would still take, the Mixons, the Swifts, the Kamaras of the world ahead of him. I do have Chubb ahead of Aaron Jones, Javonte, Cam Akers, and some other guys. So I don't hate Nick Chubb, but I've seen a few people like, oh my gosh, Nick Chubb, like RB1 now. Let's get all behind him because Watson's there. I don't know, man. We saw Lamar Miller do some things with Watson. I'm not, completely terrified of the mobile QB threat. It's more so just the fact that when Chubb and Hunt are healthy, we've already known that's going to be split. And now we also know that Nick Chubb is 2 injuries away from maybe having a featured role.
Yeah, I mean, the only hope for Chubb really is that the Browns decide for some reason to move on from Kareem Hunt. Like, I think that's really what Chubb needs. Look, and we love Chubb. Like, he's the top 3 running back in the league. As far, you could argue he's the best running back in the league, is a pure rusher. Like, he's in the top of all the cool stats that we care about and that we like. He's in the top of all of them. So you can't disrespect Nick Chubb. Like, he's just unfortunate the situation that he's landed in. But I think overall, like, adding Deshaun Watson, if you get, a lot of games from Deshaun Watson, once that happens, I think that overall helps a player like Nick Chubb, just because the overall scoring potential of the offense goes up, right? And what does Nick Chubb do? What does he rely a lot on? Scoring touchdowns. The good thing is he can break them from a long ways away, but he can also score them in close. The utilization stuff is going to be maddening for you with Hunt and then also re-signing Dearness Johnson. But the talent is there. And so if theoretically you get an offense that's now better, scoring more touchdowns, Nick Chubb's going to get his share of those. I think that could help him, but it's just not enough to, you can't really bump him up PPR rankings, especially because of the challenges you already mentioned.
Kareem Hunt, $0 in dead money with over $6 million in cap savings if the Browns decide to cut or trade him at any time. So certainly something to keep an eye on. And if that happened, all of a sudden, Dearness Johnson, we would really need to pound him until, the ADP actually goes to match it. I'm not saying it'd be a 1-for-1 switch with Hunt and Dearness, but Dearness would all of a sudden be right there in kind of that Madison Herbert tier as potential standalone flex. You're not feeling good about it. And then a workhorse handcuff if the situation should arise. Our Dallas Cowboys are up next. Reigning number 1 scoring offense in the NFL. We'll be looking a little bit different next year. Obviously, Dak back. Unfortunately, Zeke back. Tony Pollard behind him. 3 wide receiver sets, though, looking like CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. We'll see when he's back in action. It's, the ACL surgery took a long time to happen. But now updates seem to be indicating that he should be back and hopefully ready to go by week 1. The Cowboys' long-term deal and decision to move on from Amari Cooper would certainly add credence to that idea. Got to see who the wide receiver 3 is going to be. James Washington is now in town on like a veteran's minimum deal. Noah Brown's back just to confuse us more than ever when him and CeeDee Lamb are on the field. At the same time, Cedric Wilson signed with the Dolphins. So I would give the edge towards James Washington joining Gallup on the outside with CeeDee in the slot, but it is far from a given at this point. I know we've all talked a lot about, Jerry Jones maybe having his eye on a certain Arkansas receiver at the end of the first round if he is still there. Finally, at tight end, Dalton Schultz is now the featured tight end. Blake Jarwin was released. Schultz on that franchise tag. So, Dwain, it's still a pretty sick offense. I think the offensive line dominance is kind of coming to an end. Obviously, they had to lose La'el Collins, and, we would imagine they're going to try to really start retooling that group through the draft. But I still think you'd be hard-pressed to rank, more than, 5 to 8 offenses ahead of the Cowboys if you're trying to project the top scoring units ahead of next year. We love CeeDee. Where is Zeke going to go, though? Because, look, it wasn't pretty last year. We all know Tony Pollard is better with the ball in his hands. But, Dwayne, the Cowboys aren't releasing him. They're not going to bench him. And let's give the guy a little bit of credit. Before he got hurt last year, he was running pretty damn well. I'm old enough to remember in that Vikings game when he made the game-winning play and that sweet-ass dump down. He breaks 2 tackles and actually shows some burst for a change. So, look, it's not pretty, but we could see Zeke fall into the end zone 15 times and it wouldn't be completely shocking. Zeke Elliott is someone that could be there in round 5 or something. We've never been able to get him really outside the first round, maybe the second round. Are we completely out on Zeke or are we taking this buying opportunity?
Look, I'll have some shares of Zeke. I don't think there's a lot of upside here, to be honest, at this point. Like, it's just his underlying, data points have just continued to decline. So it's not just a volume thing for Zeke where, he lost touches to injury last year. If you look at his PFF receiving grades, you look at his PFF rushing grades, like they're down. Really everything that we look at, like his explosive play rate, all those things. Like he's not doing what he was doing early in his career. He was never like a huge explosive play guy, but I think you're just seeing him start to wear down. And then I think on top of that, the offensive line issues. Now the Cowboys, a lot of people are saying, hey, Traylon Burks at 24. And I think, with Jerry Jones and an Arkansas player, right, that could definitely happen. But my guess is they take an offensive lineman with their first pick. They could take offensive linemen with their first 2 picks. Like that could happen as well. So I definitely expect them to address the offensive line in the first 3 rounds of the draft. So if they could take 2 offensive linemen that we feel good about, maybe that gets us a little bit higher on Zeke. I don't think it's a situation where we think that all of a sudden Tony Pollard's going to take over the backfield. I think we've just seen the days of Zeke dominating the whole backfield are gone. But to your point, like ADP right now, like I was actually looking at draft boards where, I've seen him falling into the 5th round. Like people are completely avoiding Ezekiel Elliott. So I think there could be some value that you could mine from it. Again, we'll have to start talking about it in the context of what's the opportunity cost of the players that you're passing. But I mean, if you could get a player in the 4th or 5th round, Ian, that I think is probably going to project out as a 250-point player, like that's probably where Zeke's going to project for us. Like you could do worse, than drafting someone that's going to spot you 250 in the 4th or 5th round. Again, not a player I plan on having, overexposure to. But to your point, he did play hurt down the stretch. He ended up not missing games last year, but playing with an injury. So that's obviously a factor.
Okay. Michael Gallup was going to be my last point here. All right. My goodness. You have him ranked wide receiver 47. Is that more of a hedge on his overall health? Because Gallup does seem like someone where if he is ready to go by week 1, he's certainly someone that I'd feel good about starting on the squad. And, just seems like the definition of an upside wide receiver 3 that, hey, if we see these weeks that, Cowboys week 1 against the Buccaneers where Cooper and CeeDee are both balling out, like I don't think the drop off from Cooper to Gallup in terms of what they bring to the table is that big. Now Gallup's being priced, far beneath where Cooper was.
Yeah, it is a hedge. Like it was just the injury was so late in the season, and then they had to wait to do the surgery. So it's really like, where is Gallup going to be from a health standpoint? I'm not as high on Gallup as some folks are. I like him. I don't think he's a guy that's ever going to demand 25, 30% of an offense. I think he's a nice outside weapon that gives you contested catch, upside. He's a guy that Dak likes to go when he sees that single man coverage. Like he's one of Dak's favorite players to go to. So Gallup's obviously going to get his targets. I was kind of surprised, that they re-signed him for what they did. It ended up looking like a decent contract once everybody else signed,
right?
For the amounts that they did. Like it made Michael Gallup's contract look way better. But yeah, I mean, I like him. If we knew he was fully healthy, I think you just nailed it. Like he's a wide receiver 3. I don't know how much upside he has. I guess he does have some. I just think looking at him now at this point, like we've got multiple years of data on him, and like he just doesn't have like that profile to me that pops as being like, oh man, this guy's going to take this huge step forward. But a solid receiver, like he could be a really good receiver in a good passing offense. And even if he just got say 22% of the targets, something like that, if the Cowboys offense is cooking and he's catching a lot of the touchdowns, like that's really where Gallup could come through for you in a big way.
Moving on to the Denver Broncos, biggest winner of the offseason in terms of Kevin Cole's awesome updating wins above replacement graph that he's been shooting out over on the old Twitter sphere. I believe last time he updated it, it was Broncos 1 and Colts number 2, obviously because, upgrading that QB position is going to give you the most war other than anywhere else. But that was not the only kind of addition or subtraction they made. Noah Fant, now a member of the Seahawks, opening up the potential for Albert O to be a big time winner here. Dwain and I talk a lot about Albert O on our kind of rankings pod that was released Thursday. Long story short, he is someone that we're riding with as a low end tight end 1. Right now, we just got to continue to keep an eye throughout free agency and into the draft that they don't add someone to split reps, but showing a lot of confidence with him right now. They've only brought in Eric Tomlinson, Andrew Beck to the equation, both of whom can be considered block first tight ends. So the big outstanding question, Dwain, because look, there's wide receivers galore here. Judy, Sutton, Hamler, and Tim Patrick. Honestly, I think we can really take advantage of the Broncos right now in best ball because the confusion, the uncertainty going around the pecking order is the reason why these guys are priced where they are in the first place. We all know Russell Wilson is going to be putting up some numbers. That's why most people have him as a top 10 fantasy QB. But it's like the inverse of what we, talk about trying to find some value, like the Pittsburgh Steelers teams from a couple of years ago, where it's like some of the Eli Manning's teams where it's like, hey, we have 2 wide receivers we love. We have a running back we love. We have a tight end we love. Why is the quarterback ranked outside the top 20? With the Broncos, we have a quarterback we love. We like all the other guys. I mean, Javante's an RB1, obviously, but all the wide receivers are wide receiver 3s or lower because we don't know who's getting the ball first. And even Albert O, man, worst case, he's going to be creeping up as a low-end tight end 1, might still be there in a double-digit round. So I think the Broncos right now offer you the cheapest high upside stack that you can get in basically all fantasy football. I love it. Dwain, we got to hang our hat on one of these wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy versus Cortland Sutton, or just take the cheapest one, Tim Patrick, a couple rounds later, or maybe take all of them because, again, you don't even have to use a high round pick on these guys right now.
Yeah, I don't mind stacking, Russ Wilson with Sutton and Jeudy. I mean, if you look at right now, I mean, it's like you said, they're not like super discounted, but to your point, there's enough confusion in the marketplace about who's going to get what that, you can make it work. You can make it work on a team. They're going pretty close together. I'm pulling it back up right now. Yeah, I've got right now, and I updated this last week, but underdog Sutton 96, Jeudy going 77 overall. So you could easily, and then you got Russ Wilson going 93. So you could easily go Jerry Jeudy, Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton. And you could still add Albert O. You could have the whole offense.
It's so easy.
I agree. That's the immediate, and we talked about it yesterday. Russ Wilson, I just moved up in my ranks, yesterday as well. So he's just a guy that I think right now at this point, I like him over Dak. Because I think Wilson still gives you more upside as far as a rusher. I know it's gone down, but Dak doesn't run the ball at all. So if we think there's 2 kind of potential similar ceilings for these 2 offenses, and I would argue that's probably the case. I think you got 2, it's like you mentioned with Cooper moving on, it's a good offense, but they got some questions at offensive line and things like that. I think you got, you could argue for Russ Wilson, just as good of a supporting cast, but he gives you more upside on the ground. And look, to be honest, we've just seen Russ Wilson give us more of these upside seasons, whenever he's in an offense that allows him to actually unleash, as far as a passer. And I think that's what we're going to see this year with the Broncos. So, yeah, I love it. All over the Broncos and best ball and making those stacks.
Right now, Jeudy, wide receiver 37, Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 45. Not saying those won't increase as the offseason goes on, but if Jeudy wins out and if Patrick wins out, Sutton could still finish as a wide receiver 45 without too much problem. That's his worst case scenario. That's where he's being priced. Those are the exact sort of situations we want to keep an eye on. And obviously with Javonte, if Melvin Gordon is completely out of the picture, as Dwain ranked, back in January, assuming that was the case, he could legitimately be as high as, the RB2 overall. That is his upside. Gordon's back, going to be probably more a borderline RB1 upside RB2. You would like to think he's going to take over that job, but we can't quite assume that, as great as Javonte was last year. I love missed tackles force per carry, Dwain. I'm not so sure that's what the Broncos are basing the entirety of their decision on. Moving on. Last team in the D's, the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff seemingly back under center. We're hearing some heat about Malik Willis potentially to the Lions at number 2. But, hey, maybe that.
This Malik Willis thing is nuts to me. Malik Willis is not the number 2 freaking pick in the NFL. Come on, people.
Dwain, did you not see the bomb he threw against Air? That didn't change your whole opinion.
I like Malik Willis. But what are we doing? Last year, would he have even been a first-round pick? What are we doing? I don't get it. And look, I get it. You want to throw darts at quarterbacks. You want to get them on a rookie contract. But at some point, the equation has to say, how likely do we think this guy can be to succeed? Not just, he plays quarterback, so I want to spin a pick and see what happens. I just don't get it. Kenny Pickett pushing into the top 10 of the draft. It's going to be funny when the draft comes and freaking no quarterback goes to pick 25. And the league's just you guys are all overreading the situation. Look, I know we could have 4 go in the first round because it's such an important position. Man, I'm out. Malik Willis at pick 2. Give me a freaking break. Let's move on.
4 for 4's finest Johnny Daigle was, I think he was maybe talking about Greg Rosenthal, I don't want to misquote the person. So Daigle told me that some source was pointing out that their opinion was that the NFL is a lot lower on Malik Willis than, draft Twitter happens to be, which would make sense, man. Lamar Jackson fell to pick 31.
That was Dane Brugler and Lance Brugler.
Okay. Yes, There we go. That was it. I think they're doing a pod on The Athletic that I've heard is very
I always listen to their stuff. It's really good. If people, I love it. Gives me my once a week update, like on the draft and what, especially getting to hear like what we think NFL teams are thinking. I love hearing their like what they talk about the prospects too. But yeah,
yes, we love our guy Mike Renner, PFF's lead college draft analyst, but truly Dane Brugler, Lance Zierlein, we can make a Mount Rushmore and put all those guys there on.
Love all those guys.
We'll see what happens at quarterback. Right now, look, if Jared Goff is back, no, we're not interested in Jared Goff for fantasy, but that would be great news for Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift, and TJ Hawkinson because Goff is terrified to throw the ball downfield. Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond back. So is DJ Chark on the outside. The hype that Chark is kind of getting. Okay, I'm fine throwing a late rounder at the guy, but hell, man, it was a 1-year, $10 million deal. You would like to think that's going to guarantee him a spot in 3 wide receiver sets, but it's not a total given. There's a chance that Reynolds, Raymond, and Chark do some sort of weird rotation on the outside. Either way, I think the biggest winner throughout this offseason, yes, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you could start free agency and say, hey, the only wide receiver the Lions are going to add is DJ Chark, you can tell me that's a negative for Amon-Ra? Like, how is there ever going to be a positive in that case? So, Dwayne, I was citing your exacts. What was the threshold for PFF receiving grade? Was it 80 that Amon-Ra hit?
Well, 80 is like super elite, but for the study, I actually used 75 and above. Like the hit rate on those were really huge. But yeah, Brown got over the 80 threshold.
He was great. So get the freaking draft capital out of your mind. Realize he was great. I understand DeAndre Swift and Hawkinson were banged up during the stretch, but this is once again going to be a bad team. I think the Lions are a year away from being a year away still. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I feel like our first instinct sometimes is when a player plays really well to just assume they're going to fall off a cliff. And it's like, guys, we found a potential fantasy wide receiver 1, at worst, someone that I think you'd be hard pressed to rank outside the top 24 in Detroit. Just be happy about it. Why is it so hard, Dwayne?
I don't know. I got him at wide receiver 19. I love him. He hit the PFF receiving grade of 80, like you talked about. Targets per route run 22%, and then like down the stretch, like having multiple back-to-back 30% target share games. You have to be good at some point to do that, because the team you're playing opposite of you have to realize they're watching 3 to 4 weeks of film they're really hyper focused on, and eventually they start seeing this guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, who is this guy? Like, this is the guy we got to stop. And guess what? Amon-Ra St. Brown kept doing his thing. Is he isolated a little bit by getting a lot of his work from the slot? Yeah, but he also worked outside down the stretch at the end of last season. So he wasn't just a slot receiver. So I'm with you. Like, the DJ Chark thing, I think is actually, it's fine. I think it gives them another deep threat. I think that helps St. Brown. But I think it's interesting, right? Well, people are like, well, it's Hawkinson and Swift. Like, what NFL offense really... Like, I don't get it. Like, we talked about it last year. We said most likely Swift and Hawkinson are going to be the most targeted players on the Lions. But now you find out you have this player in St. Brown. Like, to me, get more of the passes to Hawkinson and St. Brown. Don't throw as many balls to the running backs. Because, on a targets per route basis, we even had, we even had Williams involved. Jamal Williams was involved. So I think it's just a situation where you throw a little bit less to your running backs. That opens up additional targets to go to Amon-Ra St. Brown that are going to be, you're going to get a higher expected points added per play on them. You get TJ Hawkinson the ball as well. And then you got a deep threat in DJ Chark. We'll see what Josh Reynolds or some of these other guys can do. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he's another player that I don't think you have to draft right now in best ball. I think his ADP is probably as high as it's going to get. I don't think it would go any higher if Detroit totally avoids drafting receiver in the first 3 rounds. I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown's ADP gets any higher than it is today. But if the Lions were to draft a receiver in the first or second round, Amon-Ra St. Brown's ADP is going to fall. Kind of similar to what we talked about with Gabe Davis. And that's going to be the moment where I'm going to be super excited to pounce on grabbing more of the Amon-Ra St. Brown shares, because no matter who they draft, I think he performed well enough in his own right that, he's going to be a value if his ADP falls.
it's not going to be the Raiders adding Devontae freaking Adams to the offense. Like we've avoided like the nuclear bombs basically that could take out Amon-Ra so far. TJ Hawkinson, we talked about him before as a pretty nice, if you just don't want to touch those top 5 tight ends, but don't want to completely ignore, the early mid-round seam. I think Hawk makes a lot of sense there as tight end 6. I would just say Jamal Williams is someone that if he plays 17 games, he's going to have over 200 touches. We're going to be annoyed at him splitting the carries with Swift. Supposed to get the fantasy-friendly receiving work. Like, that's why he should be ranked ahead of Williams. As we saw, when Swift went down, Williams wasn't even a great handcuff. He was a little bit banged up too. I'm not saying he's in the Madison Pollard tier, but Dwayne, like last night when I was doing the underdog draft, Williams was there like round 18 or 19 at the very end with a bunch of absolute nobodies. So all I'm saying is with Jamal Williams, if you go, complete 0 RB, you can do a lot worse at the very end of the draft than someone that, again, has a good chance of seeing, over 200 touches. So don't freak out. But as we saw, he was RB5 after week 1 of last year. I would think they're not going to throw him the ball that much. Maybe they do. So Detroit likes Jamal Williams.
Look, the thing that happened to Jamal Williams is he got game scripted out. Right. The same way that some players get game scripted in.
He kind of had, honestly, all right, it was a far worse offense, but the Arizona Cardinals, like Chase Edmonds was their DeAndre Swift and James Conner was their Jamal Williams.
Exactly. That's right. Yes. And so, Williams, if the Lions take a step forward, which is a big if, right? You could see Williams' role expand. I think DeAndre Swift can still give you value, but I think the most likely scenario is you see a little more Jamal Williams this year, because I truly do believe it was the way the game scripts went that really, phased him out of the offense more so than it just being Swift taking over. And I like Swift. Like he's a young back, going to be 24 this year. He's involved in the passing game. There are definitely holes in his game, though. It's not like, Swift has come through in every way on the fantasy points, but he's definitely had some luck go his way. All the blowout scripts, making some of the long plays, and we give him credit for those things. But look, his overall PFF grade, 57.8. His PFF rushing grade is a 61.3. Jamal Williams was actually better, a 68.4. The explosive play rate is what did it for Swift last year. He had a few plays that really kind of, sent him over the edge. His explosive play rate was 14%. So that's a carry of 10 yards or more, divided by the number of rushing attempts the player had. And it was 8% for Jamal Williams, which makes sense. Like Swift, probably still the more explosive player, going to get, he'll give you more negative plays, also going to give you more big plays. The guy they prefer whenever they're in the 2-minute offense, whenever they're in long down and distance. So those things all still go in Swift's favor. But if all of a sudden, the Lions weren't, losing the most in the NFL, and now all of a sudden, what if they were like just below average in their number of game strips, where they're losing by 4 or more points? That will impact like the utilization of Jamal Williams, in my opinion.
He was getting better before he got hurt on the ground. But we need to keep in mind, if we're going to use all those statistics to reward Javonte Williams and give him a nice bump, God, can't just ignore them for, DeAndre Swift when it does indicate that Jamal Williams probably will continue to be annoyingly involved on the ground. It's not egregious, though. It's kind of like Melvin Gordon, Javonte. Jamal is not bad. He's never been bad. Aaron Jones was awesome. I understand why we wanted Jones over Williams for fantasy purposes, but still certainly a guy where you recognize why professional team would use him in a committee. Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers back. Devontae Adams, not so much. Now a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. Robert Tonyan did come back to be their starting tight end again. That's, another hat in the late round tight end game. And another reason why I am more than fine, kind of fading these top 5 guys for the most part this year. Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon still in the backfield. After that is a complete mess. Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, Malik Taylor. There are not many guys here in Green Bay. Did MVS officially sign with the Chiefs, Dwayne? I saw he tweeted it seemed like he was happy about making a decision, and then I couldn't actually find something about him making the decision.
Yeah, he signed.
Okay, he did. Cool.
Yeah.
He's with the Chiefs officially. So, yeah, this, again, it's a passing game that we just can't talk too much about right now at wide receiver because I highly, highly doubt Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb are actually going to be the top 2 targets entering week 1. Maybe, though, as we've all.
Even if they are, you can't project them for 25 or 30% of the targets. Look, Alan Lazard is a nice player, but he's a complimentary player. When you look at his profile, you look at what he's done, and this is where the per route stuff really helps us. Because we have these players that we know have never had a full-time role necessarily. And then you want to look at, okay, well, but when they were on the field, like what were they able to do? And when you look at Allen Lazard, like it's a meh profile. We like him. He's going to still get to play with Aaron Rodgers. Just don't go nuts. Like if his ADP stays within reason, because there's always a spot in the range of outcomes where a player completely surprises us and takes his game to a new level. But for the most part, someone at the stage they are in Allen Lazard's career, just because there are more targets available doesn't mean we need to give them this huge bump. He might be able to pick up an additional 2 to 3% of the targets, but you're not going to see this big, huge jump most likely for Lazard. Randall Cobb, same thing, where he's at this point in his career. Amari Rodgers also just didn't do anything as a rookie. Couldn't even really get on the field. So that's not really that encouraging. Late round stabs, yeah. I like Amari Rodgers more outside of best ball. Like he's not a guy I really want to have that could just be a complete zero the whole year. Whereas if I get him in redraft, I see, does he earn some playing time? Does he not? And then I can make a reaction 2 or 3 weeks in. Hell, I'll make a reaction after week 1. If the guy ain't out there for 50 or 60% of the routes, I can just cut him. So those are some of the things I think about, like between best ball and between redraft on some of these later round picks. I know we're taking swings, but man, you really want to avoid, you don't want a team that's got like 3 crazy, swings on guys just based on potential, opportunity this early in the season before the draft, and you get complete zeros out of them.
So what is the most sure thing in the Green Bay offense? Maybe it's Aaron Jones. I was, if you guys have been playing fantasy football for any length of time, you guys probably know like the Aaron Jones receiving splits without Davante Adams have been pretty big over the years. I just typed that into Twitter, and Dwayne, you had a nice stat come up from late October, I guess, when Davante was set to miss time. Aaron Jones in 6 games without Davante Adams, 2019 and 2020. 18% target share, 29 catches, 337 yards, 4 touchdowns. They used him a lot more at wide receiver. If you guys remember that Chiefs Sunday night game from a couple years ago, I believe Jones went for like 9, 158, and 2, with a lot of that coming out wide. And it was like broke next gen stats database for like a running back lining up as a wide receiver and putting up big numbers. Also, shout out Wolf of Roto Street at Roto Street Wolf. He's been on this podcast a couple of times, where Aaron Jones's full season pace without Davante Adams as a receiver, 87 catches, 942 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Notes that Jones has been basically Green Bay Kamara without Davante Adams. He is getting older. We saw A.J. Dillon towards the end of the year. Jones was coming off injury, but make it really more of a 50-50 split. Dwayne, are we too low on Aaron Jones? Maybe this is the year we do see him release like a Green Bay Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I think that's what you're going to need, is him to really play that, Kamara role. And I think it's in his wheelhouse. Like when you look at Aaron Jones, you look at what he's done, you look at his, specifically, his profile, like it shows that like he can be he can be an elite receiving back. And so it's not just the fantasy points that we've seen come in these splits without Davante Adams, but it's also really been what he's been able to do from a yards per route run. So for a running back, these are really good. Yards per route run of 1.24, 1.40, 1.55. That's from 2021, 2020, 2019. You look at his targets per route run. He's at 22%, 24%, 20%. So he's shown that ability to get up towards that 25% mark, which is where, really like the elites like Kamara, that's where they live, is in that range. So I think there's totally opportunity. Look at receiving grade, 82.8, 76.5, 72.5. Those are really top-notch receiving grades for running backs as well. So I think the profile and what he's been able to do, the underlying metrics, they match, right, what we've seen from a fantasy production standpoint when we haven't had Davante Adams. So I think looking at Jones, like the big thing is A.J. Dillon could probably take on even a little bit more of the rushing attempts. But to your point, the path to value for Jones that we shouldn't ignore is that opportunity to really play more of a true receiving back role. The problem we've got to avoid is last year there were times where they were letting A.J. Dillon stay on the field, towards the end of the season in some of those passing, situations. And he's totally the opposite. He can catch the ball, but he's a check down guy. Like he's a behind the line of scrimmage negative A-dot. Like, okay, God, like the first 3 reads were covered. Here you go, Dillon. Let me dump it to you. It's not like a first read. They'll give him some screens and things like that. But I think that's the thing that we're going to have to figure out. But if you're wanting to look at what is a potential way where Aaron Jones could still be a top 6 back this season, I think you just named it. Now, we know they're going to do something in the draft. You've already mentioned that. Just a reminder to everybody, look at the Packers, 2 picks in the first round. Pick 22 from the Raiders, their own pick 28. 2 picks in the second round, pick 53 from the Raiders, their pick 59. And they've got a 3rd round pick of 92. So they're going to be able to do a lot with those 5 picks. You have to believe that probably 2 of those picks go towards weapons for Aaron Rodgers.
Please don't add to this backfield. We can live with Jones and Dillon.
Don't.
Please don't.
That's what the Packers are going to do. You know it. They're going to completely troll us, and they're going to be like, yeah, we got to go ahead and get a third back.
We really thought we were just one more running back away from yeah, that's going to be great. Houston Texans, obviously Deshaun Watson, now a member of the Browns. Tyrod Taylor, now a member of the Giants, setting up Davis Mills season. Kyle Allen is there to potentially just completely waste away wide receivers if he gets the chance to be under center. And also Jeff Driscoll's getting another chance at quarterback. Apparently the tight end plan quickly failed. So keep an eye on that if you're just super into the Houston Texans happenings under center. The running back room, for whatever reason, continues to consist of basically Rex Burkhead and a bunch of other Jags. Royce Freeman is back in town. Dari Ogunbowale was, the high-profile sounding that they did bring from the Jags, speaking of. But yeah, you would really like to think that they bring someone in the draft. Or maybe they don't, Dwayne, and maybe we once again see a legit 4 running back committee that we can just stay the hell away from outside of the 1 or 2 random spike weeks we get throughout the season. So running backs looking like we can stay away. We'll see what happens. Wide receiver, yeah, I sent out a tweet at one point of like all the random wide receivers this team has signed over the last 2 years. They're just terrified of like doing anything to compete right now. And it's kind of hilarious if you like aren't a fan of the Texans. But Chris Conley's back, Chris Moore's back. Davian Davis is back. Once again, it's looking like Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins should be in 2 wide receiver sets. Again, you would like to think they would add someone high round, but they really didn't last year with the exception of Nico.
This totally feels like when you listen to this, I feel like we're like filming, the first version of Major League, where like all the fans are sitting there and they're reading the roster and they're like, who are these guys?
This guy's been dead. Tight end, Pharaoh Brown's back. Anthony Auclair's back. Jordan Aiken's still a free agent. It's not, you can see it from Brevin Jordan, but we're taking a leap of faith here. Like he was forced to be in a committee or even work behind these guys last year. I think there are a lot better late round tight ends you can feel better about than Brevin Jordan, to be honest. Maybe I'll be wrong, but the guy's still only 22, I believe, years old. It's just, this isn't the offense we want to be messing with.
The 19% targets per route run is pretty solid. Like that's more than Dawson Knox has ever done, like in his life. But and the yards per route run, 1.19, but being on an offense as bad as they are on, Dawson Knox has the same kind of yards per route run. It's actually lower than that. And he's on an elite offense. Whereas when you look at a guy like Brevin Jordan on a bad offense, it's probably attached to some of that number is attached to the offense. But then you step back and go, okay, well, great. How's this offense really going to be better this year? Yeah, I don't know. Great question. Like I can't necessarily answer that. So I'm with you. Not a guy to get overly excited about. Going off the board right now on underdog is tight end 25. But I think what you're looking for is like, what could be a young piece on the offense that could spark it? Because you're just not going to draft these other older guys.
Yeah.
Like nobody's going to want to. So I think when people look at Houston, naturally, where does your eye go? It goes to, well, maybe there's this one shiny diamond in the rough. Well, it's going to go to Brevin Jordan outside of looking, at Brandon Cooks being a volume play.
Played 60% snaps in just 1 of his 9 games. Yeah. If he's your last round pick as like your 3rd or 4th tight end, okay. But we're really getting to the weeds there to try to rationalize it. Yeah. Brandon Cooks, once again, Dwayne, is just shaping up as the one guy that we're going to be forced to take a nice long look at. Where do you have him ranked right now? I believe I actually was kind of squeezing him into that upside wide receiver 3 range. Yeah, I got Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 27. I think him and Darnell Mooney can essentially be looked at as the same guy. I give Cooks the slight benefit of the doubt. And hey, Davis Mills did show he can put up, unlike Zach Wilson, unlike Trevor Lawrence, Davis Mills showed he can put up some, big-ish numbers, even in the course of the Texans losing a lot of games. So Brandon Cooks, man, every single year he's being priced as like a low-end wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, and he keeps on keeping on. Why should we think 2022 will be any different?
Yeah, I've got him at 32. So, we're pretty close to each other. I
also think, right next to Mooney. Nice.
Like if he lived as like the elite number 1 on an offense with a quarterback that we felt a lot better about and an overall better offense, like he would be in the wide receiver 2s. Like his situation playing on the Texans is really, what gives us the most concern. But to your point, like there were some flashes with Davis Mills towards the end of the season. He played early, wasn't that great, got benched. Tyrod Taylor played a little bit. Then you got to see Mills a little bit at the end of the season again, and he did a few things. So we'll see what happens with Mills. But I think any way you cut it, like it's hard. You can't not have Brandon Cooks like in your wide receiver threes. Like he's at least got to be there. And if Mills took a step forward, that would be the path for Brandon Cooks to all of a sudden be like, hey, look at me, guys, wide receiver 15. Like that could happen.
1,000+ yards in 6 of the last 7 years. As a rookie, he didn't get it only because he got hurt, only played 10 games. 2019, Jared Goff was doing some Jared Goff things. Always got to worry about the concussion history, but man, the dude's played 14+ games dating back to every single season other than his rookie year in 2014. So kudos to Brandon Cooks. Still only 28 years old too, man. Like this dude has just been around balling. Wouldn't be surprised if he continues to do so. Next up, we got the Indianapolis Colts. They did make a fairly major quarterback change. Obviously, Matt Ryan now under center. Carson Wentz now a member of the Washington Commanders. At wide receiver, Zach Pascal out of the picture. He signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. T.Y. Hilton, still an unrestricted free agent. He kind of did like his farewell to Indianapolis. I don't think he's coming back. We did get Ashton Doolin back. Maybe Paris Campbell stays healthy. I do like Paris, again, at the very bottom of drafts because he's just someone you're going to see in like the wide receiver 70-80 range. And all of a sudden, if he is, healthy for once and starting in week 1, he could get there. Everyone's looking for the next Deebo Samuel. Paris Campbell was probably the cheapest person that, after I give you a joint and 6 beers, you probably could somewhat wrap your mind around. Either way, man, I do think it's all good news for Michael Pittman and the fact that we now have Matt Ryan under center. So maybe they go out and add a Julio. Maybe they draft someone high. If not, Dwayne, Michael Pittman's starting to check a lot of these boxes that we look for in a third-year breakout wide receiver. I thought he took a nice step forward in year 2 from year 1, where he was more of just this kind of bigger yak receiver. But man, some of the plays he made last year, jumping over the Ravens dude on a severely underthrown ball by Wentz, like he flashed, and it wasn't like he was busting on big target totals. He was just unfortunately getting game scripted out of a lot of matchups. So I think Michael Pittman has a reasonable case as the year 3 breakout wide receiver. Just hasn't quite taken that final step. We do have Mo Alley Cox back to maybe be a number 2. We can talk about tight end in a second, but overall thoughts on Michael Pittman, Dwayne, because again, if he's going in there as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, I truly believe he has in his range of outcomes a wide receiver 1 season in him.
Yeah, look, I like the move to Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, I think just gives you an overall accuracy upgrade, like versus what we saw with Wentz. Wentz can be real hit or miss. He's like one of these hot or cold quarterbacks. And I'm not saying Matt Ryan's still where he was at, multiple years ago, as far as where his accuracy goes. But like, if you look at, like, you guys can go check out the PFF quarterback annual. And for each quarterback, there is an accuracy charting shot. That's really cool. It basically shows you how often does the quarterback really put it right on the receiver, like kind of pinpoint accuracy is what we call it, accurate, meaning like, hey, boom, right there within the frame, they're running across the field. It's a perfect throw, keeps them moving. It gets rid of plays where like a defender's in the front, you got to throw it behind. Like that's actually graded as accurate. So all those factors are taken in. And then you have the uncatchable pass rate. And so when you just go in, you guys can compare it for yourself. When you go look at Matt Ryan versus Carson Wentz. So I like that. And to your point, Ian, like on Pittman, like he doesn't necessarily profile someone like we think would just be like this elite, receiver, but like really doing some good things. Like I would say it's still within his range of outcomes. I have him inside, my top 24, I believe. I
got him 15. I wasn't even drunk, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I'm at 23. I'm at 23. So, I mean, his PFF receiving grade last year was 79.9 yards per route run, 1.95, despite some of the issues with the quarterback play. Targets per route run, 22%. So, yeah, I mean, overall target share for the team, though, 26%. So he clearly led the team. So I think he is a guy, like it's in his range of outcomes, Ian, that we could see a 30% target share. And just like what we talk about with Jonathan Taylor, where he really had game scripts work in his favor, the game scripts really worked against Michael Pittman last year.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, I had put out some tweets at the end of the year like, hey, guys, just remember, like in an alternate simulation, Michael Pittman is a mid-tier wide receiver 2, like with wide receiver 1 upside. And so I think, where you've got him, I think that's reasonable. Looking at the fact that, this is a player that's only going to be 25 years old, going to be in his 3rd season, doing what he did last year. The Colts haven't made any big moves as far as really giving him any competition. We just need the game script. We need the Colts to be in a little bit more competitive situations. I think if you take that and you add the small upgrade you get with Matt Ryan, I like it for Pittman.
I think those same points also go hand in hand with Nyheim Hines, maybe giving you some value in full PPR, being usually outside the top 50 backs. Again, if things don't go as smoothly as last year, maybe they do. The defense is still very good. Obviously, Matt Ryan should be an upgrade over Wentz. Just keep in mind, Nyheim Hines would be a big beneficiary of that. They locked him down before last season started. Coaching staff loves him. He's great. Like the freaking end zone dances that guy can do are absolutely bananas. I mean, just an tightly wound electric ball of athleticism. Mo Alley Cox is back and Jack Doyle retired. Dwayne, this feels to me a little bit like a David Njoku trap, though, because I think Colin Granson is just going to probably have his role increase. Maybe they sign another tight end and continue to use 3 of them in there. So love Mo Alley Cox. The guy is ginormous. Ex-basketball player, checks all those boxes that fantasy analysts get a hard on about. I just, not totally convinced he's going to have all the volume. Dwayne, I think I saw you had Mo Alley Cox like tight end 30, maybe a little low, but it's you.
Yeah, look, again, like a lot, these still have to be tightened, especially towards the bottoms of my ranks.
Sure.
I haven't gotten to where I feel like super, firm around them.
He's not going to be
a projection process helps a lot with like more of these, iffy guys. But yeah, look, he belongs in a tier of guys that you should say they're going to get more opportunity. Like that's where Mo Alley Cox belongs. And so, I mean, if you look at him, let me pull him up just real quick. I know we probably need to move on to the next team, but I got some data here I can pull up on Cox. So like looking at him, targets per route run, like the underlines are pretty good. I mean, 24%, 13%, that's not a good year, but 19% and 17%. He has 2 years where his yards per route run are over a 2. Ooh. So there's some things with Mo Alley Cox that would make you think with more opportunity. I definitely have him too low, like just looking at these, there is opportunity that he could take that step forward. There's also the fact that what you just talked about, this team loves to really rotate tight ends. Now, there's also a great possibility that, he really is just the best one on the team now, and they don't have enough guys that they really want to rotate that much anymore. So I think Mo Alley Cox is still, I think he's a player that I don't mind taking the swing on late in best ball because, one, I don't think his situation is going to get much worse through the draft. There's not a lot of good tight ends in the draft, right? Number 2, even if they add another weapon in the draft, Mo Alley Cox, has shown these flashes of being able to do these things, and now he's going to have more opportunity. So I think he's a nice late round add. And in redraft, what's nice is, again, like you see a couple of weeks, and if they're still using a rotation, you just dump it. Just like, okay, whatever. But if it comes out and all of a sudden we're like, you and I are doing our first episode, Sunday Night Football's on, and we're recording, and I'm like, holy shit, Ian, 75% routes run for Mo Alley Cox. Like, we're going to be excited. Like, we'll be excited about that because he has flashed in the past. And so, like, again, like not to completely pick on Dawson Knox has never flashed any of these things. He's literally just scooping up exhaust fumes from the Bills offense, and it's carrying him along. He's never shown that could he live on his own if he wasn't in an offense that threw the ball so much and had a great quarterback. No, Mo Alley Cox has at least flashed that. And so I think that makes him worth a late round pick. Real quick on Wentz. So I knew this was here, and I was trying to pull up on the fly when I was talking about Matt Ryan. But catchable, inaccurate passes, meaning like, look, the receiver could get it, but they had to stop, make an adjustment to catch the ball, right? 27th and a higher is worse, right? And so this is out of 32 quarterbacks for Wentz. Uncatchable pass rate, meaning receiver had no chance. Could have had a ladder, could have had, a jetpack, didn't matter, couldn't have caught it. 26 out of 32. So that's the issue I'm talking about that Wentz brought to the table that you're not going to get with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is much more in line with just the league averages on those types of plays. And really what you're looking for, you just want to avoid the bad extremes of quarterbacks that do these things. And so for Wentz, this has been something that's been in the past as well. And his accurate plus rate is 23 out of 32. And then if you look at his accurate, just overall accurate rate, meaning, hey, basically got it right on the receiver when they needed to get it. And it's also low. He's 27 out of 32. So it's a situation where Carson Wentz was just not, from an accuracy standpoint, was not really good across the board. I know he does push the ball down the field more, which we'll talk about, the Commanders in a minute and what that may mean for McLaurin. But overall, I think this is an upgrade at quarterback for Pittman and the quality of targets that he's going to see.
The head-scratching team of free agency. The Jacksonville Jaguars up next. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence still getting more than a few more chances to improve upon that. Yeah, objectively disastrous 2021 campaign, but Urban Meyer's out of the picture, no longer kicking kickers, doing any number of other things that have been reported. By the way, Dwayne, I don't buy that Urban Meyer didn't know who Aaron Donald was. I think right now you could release any article about anything about Urban Meyer and people would just be so ready to jump on it and throw him under the bus. Not saying he hasn't, walked himself into those situations.
And dude, he jokes sometimes. Who's this 99 guy? Like, and coaches, that's the way they talk. They talk in terms of
numbers.
They don't talk about the players' names. Like, man, this 45 guy, this, whatever Ian's number was, like this middle linebacker, like, we got to watch out for him. Like, that's the way they talk. They don't know. I mean, they know the names, but they talk in terms of numbers. And so it's like not that surprising, to me, like to hear that.
Like, I think we understand that it was arguably the worst coaching campaign we've seen. Like, the horse has been dead for months, though, everyone. Like, we don't need to keep having a new breakthrough story on it every 2 weeks. So with that off my chest, running back, this is where it's interesting, Dwayne. Again, I love kind of going through the process of rankings because I think it makes you start to look at situations just more objectively. And are we positive James Robinson is going to play football next year? Because he's being treated seemingly as a top 40 back. He just tore his Achilles in December, man. It's really cool that Cam Akers came back as quick as he did. I don't think that should necessarily be the baseline these days. And let's face it, Cam Akers and Marlon Mack both came back and were both objectively bad. Now, I know Akers had the tough run defenses and everything. Pick any stat, though. He was terrible. Same thing, really, with Marlon Mack. I would think in year 2, they'll be back more. Now, shout out Dr. Jesse Morse, got in my mentions. He does not expect James Robinson to play football next year. If we think there's even a chance James Robinson is going to be on that Akers trajectory where, hey, maybe he's coming back more so in the second half, Dwayne's dog's with me here. If Robinson is coming back later in the season, man, Travis Etienne all of a sudden is being priced basically where he was last year. And now more than ever, he's looking like a 3-down back. We don't have to deal with Urban. We don't have to deal with Carlos Hyde, thank God. And we seemingly might have to deal with James Robinson. Travis Etienne, Dwayne, in full PPR, maybe he's the key that unlocks a fantasy football championship. That was a good line.
I would be drafting ETN right now. I think this news is going to get stronger and stronger, and he's going to continue to move up boards. And the Jaguars aren't going to spend an early pick on the backfield.
RB16, Dwayne.
Yeah, I've got him up. Where do I have him right now? Hang on, let me pull it back over here. I was looking at something else.
I'll get it.
So I've got ETN 19 right now. So
rookie numbers.
I think he's going to continue to probably move up even a little bit more from there. I could see him getting. I don't think he'd get into the top 12. I mean, look, if James Robinson, if the news sounds really solid, like he's not going to play, ETN could push into the top 12. Look, and here's the thing we love about ETN. I know, like a lot of the film folks and that I respect a lot. Like there's a lot of them that don't really like ETN. I'm talking the true grinders, the ones that go in and really watch it. Most fantasy analysts, let's be honest, are watching
the Matt Walbens of the world.
Yeah. A lot of the fantasy analysts, let's be honest, they're watching highlights and you see them repost the same highlights. Look at this long explosive play. But the things that I think sometimes there's a disconnect, right? And what I really care is what does the NFL value? And I don't think NFL teams, honestly, like when I see the work from a guy like Jay Moyer, I think he probably knows more about running backs than a lot of coaches in the NFL. And how much he's taught me just from a freaking Twitter feed. Like he's taught me about the way running backs operate and like what they need to do as far as understanding, vision and reading the blocks and how you set things up, all those sort of things. But at the end of the day, what matters is the NFL cares where they've invested their draft capital, and they overvalue a lot of these athletic traits. But, so it's not a perfect, system that's in place for figuring out which running backs are the best and who should be playing. But at the end of the day, like those are the guys that get on the field. And the things I do like about ETN is he's got an explosive, his explosive play rate in college was really high. And so we like that. And he has a receiving profile. Yeah. So those two things together in a PPR format. And we saw it last year. Jay will tell you DeAndre Swift's not a great running back. But guess what? The team kept him on the field when it mattered in a PPR league. He was out there to catch passes. And even though he sucked a lot at the time, he came through with these explosive plays. We just talked about Swift a minute ago. I think ETN profiles very similarly. So even if he's not going to be perfect, in a vacuum as far as the decisions he's going to make on the field. One, the coaches are going to put him out there. Two, he still can be good enough, to give you the explosive plays to overcome the bad ones. And then three, man, look, in PPR, like you've mentioned it many times, like how much more a target is worth than a rushing attempt. You're printing money if you're going to have a back that's going to be out there on all the passing downs. And at this moment, like even if James Robinson comes back, my guess is ETN, no matter what, is going to get the 2-minute work, probably going to get all the long down and distance work, and then get up to 40 to 50% of the rushing work. So even if James Robinson came back, I don't like where you're drafting ETN right now is fine. I would still be okay with drafting ETN at where he's going right now as far as ADP, which on Underdog is 53 overall. It is RB 19, right where I have him ranked. But I'm starting to lean with you. I need to figure. I'm going to have to move ETN up a little bit because I do think people should be more aggressive on him right now drafting because I think his ADP is going to rise.
Yes, Urban's gone, but the GM that pulled the trigger and took him in the first round is back. I'm completely out on James Robinson where he's going. Just don't take someone as a top 40 running back that you think might not feasibly play a single snap next season. Just incredible, fantasy analysis there from myself. So wide receiver room quickly, we kind of went through this a lot throughout free agency. We don't really know, and we don't have, this is not like Denver where we don't know. So that makes all these guys values. Like this could be more like the 2021, New York Giants where we don't really know and no one's worth chasing because there's not much of a ceiling there in the first place. You would think 3 wide receiver sets are going to be Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Marvin Jones. New trade rumor for Laviska Shenault seemingly every day going on. We also got Laquan Treadwell back in action. Evan Ingram is there now. Not completely, drinking the Kool-Aid on him, just all of a sudden morphing into Travis Kelce or Zach Ertz just because his head coach is Doug Peterson. But hey, if Ingram is going to be there as like a tight end 18 or something like that, yeah, sure. I can talk myself into a dart at that price. Just be careful about him getting into the top 12. Anything you want to talk about on these receivers and tight ends, Dwayne?
No, look, there's just a lot of them. Yeah. And I think the biggest question just remains Trevor Lawrence, right? Like what's going to happen? Like if you look at Trevor Lawrence, last season and how he performed, like it was really, even with the weapons he had, like, look, big time throws, 23 out of 32, on target passes, 27th out of 32, positive grade rate, 28th out of 32, grade from a clean pocket, which is usually stable year over year, 28th of 32. That's concerning. Turnover worthy plays, 22 of 32, higher being worse in that case.
Bad.
Third down grade, right around average. Negative play grade though, 20. So your positive play grade is 28 out of 32, and your negative grade 28 out of 32, with a higher number being worse. And then grade under pressure, 25 out of 32. So there's nothing to hang your hat on. Now he's a first year quarterback. So if you're a believer in the profile for Lawrence, if you're a believer that he's going to take a step forward, then you can probably have some confidence in trying to figure out which parts of this Jacksonville offense could potentially give you some value based on ADP. But I think my approach with Jacksonville will be most likely, Ian, whichever ones are the cheapest. And then that way, if Trevor Lawrence does come through, like, look, if Trevor Lawrence comes through, are we so sure Christian Kirk's really going to outscore Marvin Jones? I think it'll probably end up being close, So, I mean, Marvin Jones was actually, on under pressure was his favorite target versus the blitz, his favorite target last year, and in the red zone, his favorite target last year. So I don't think all of a sudden Christian Kirk's going to take over all those things. We like Christian Kirk. He's a younger player, but the ADP difference is going to be right now. You're talking wide receiver 48 for Christian Kirk versus, and that's before that's not fully baking in, right, that he could be the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville versus Marvin Jones. You get at wide receiver 70, who already showed us last year was the favorite target of Trevor Lawrence. So I think there's an argument you can make. I know Marvin Jones will be 33 this year, but there's an argument you could make that at the discount in ADP, if Trevor Lawrence all of a sudden turns everything around, like I think Marvin Jones is probably going to be close to Christian Kirk, like, and how they're going to finish. And you can get him way later. So that's probably my approach.
I'm fine chasing the money to figure out who's going to be starting. Like, this is why we're not confident in Isaiah McKenzie being on the field a bunch in Buffalo. In terms of pecking order, though, who the quarterback's going to throw the ball to, I'm not so sure it makes a difference when they're out there just playing on the field. Like, look at the Patriots last year, man. They paid Jonnu, Henry, Aguilar, and Bourne. Jacoby Myers ends up working as the number one more weeks than not. Like, Aguilar was the highest paid wide receiver. He worked as like the number 4 pass game option. So, yeah, he was out there over N'Keal Harry and other guys. We should have been able to deduce that based on the contract. Once he's actually on the field, those where things can get different. Gonna take a quick break, get to some advertisements from our lovely sponsors. And oh my gosh, it's not even a sponsor. It's my employer, PFF. You can get 25% off any PFF subscription if you just use code FANTASY. All of our locked article content, NFL draft guide, completely unlocked mock draft simulator, 2022 free agent rankings, data and grades from the entire 2021 season, all that and so much more. Definitely going to be having our ranks live on that site for all you best ball fanatics out there as early as next week. So keep an eye out for that. Support the pod and use promo code FANTASY for 25% off any sub. Also, shout out to Manscaped. Can I get a round of applause, everyone? Today, I'm excited to announce Manscaped launched their Ultra Premium Collection. Believe it or not, it's for your not-so-private parts. I'll talk about a leveled-up hygiene routine with your favorite manly scent. This is an all-in-one skin and hair care kit for the everyday man and covers you from head to toe. Literally, Manscaped is trusted below the waist. Now, trust them with the rest. Join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code PFF. Again, 20% off and free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. The power of attraction is now in a bottle thanks to Manscaped. Dwain, we're like halfway through. Maybe we'll speed it up a little bit here. Kansas City Chiefs are going to be our next squad. Obviously, you know, we hit
them pretty good yesterday. So yeah, I think we can get this one pretty fast.
Talked 30 minutes about the offense. So Tyreek, Juju, you know, Kelsey, it's not as we basically deduced it's not as big of a positive for Kelsey. Sell the man in Dynasty for the love of God. I think people are making it out to be. If you still want to rank him tight end 1, not going to disagree there. But again, our general strategy this year, at least as far as right now is concerned, is that those top 5 tight ends were largely going to be fading anyway. So let's just look a little bit at running back, Dwain, because there has been some rumors about Ronald Jones entering this situation. If they go ahead and add Ronald Jones, is that going to be enough for you to really just be like, oh my God, Clyde, get out of my top 24? Or would you still be confident enough in him maybe taking a step forward? Because let's face it, Clyde, we need the targets. So from that situation, man, I would rather have Ronald Jones there than them bring back Jerick McKinnon or Darrell Williams.
Yeah. Edward Scissorhands is not going on the field like during passing downs. Ronald Jones is terrible. And that's not just, you know, oh my God, just piling on. Like, go watch Ronald Jones. Like, it's really bad. And
I always use the one example. He caught a touchdown. The refs ruled it a drop, and he just flipped the ball. Okay. And was like, yep, you're probably right.
Oh my God. Yeah. So like Edwards-Helaire, I've already said, get out of my top 24. He's not in there. Like he's 28 for me right now. Here, look. Darrell Williams, should he be a threat to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a first-round pick? No. Jerick McKinnon, should he be a threat to a first-round pick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire? At this point in Jerick McKinnon's career, no. I've seen enough. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not taking over this backfield. He's not. He can't. Derek Gore could take snaps from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You know, and is that to say it's all on Edwards-Helaire? I don't know. He's also been injured. You know, you've got a coaching staff. But look, when you look at Andy Reid, like we've seen him take these backs like Brian Westbrook, you know, even Deuce Staley back in the day and give them this full role, get them super involved in the passing game, did it, you know, with Kareem Hunt, you know, so Jamal Charles. We've got all these examples of Andy Reid, you know, feeding backs, and he doesn't want to feed Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That tells me really all I need to know. I'm out on Edwards-Helaire. I just don't really – your reason would be, hey, you got this great elite offense. We just lost Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, what's that going to do? You know, what's the upside of the Chiefs offense now versus what it was before? I think it's definitely taken a hit. So for me with Edwards-Helaire, man, he's just and all the underlyings, I just don't like him. And like his yards after contact aren't good. His missed tackles forced per attempt, meh. His explosive rate is terrible. He's not explosive. And remember, explosive carries is only 10 yards. It's not like you got to get a 50-yarder to the house. It's the ability to produce 10-yard carries on a consistent basis. He's not done that. So he just doesn't check any box. And even if we take his per route run metrics, not great, 13% targets per route run. Where's Alvin Kamara and the guys that we would want like to think about and the old Brian Westbrook? Those numbers are 25%. 23%, 27%, in that range. Edwards-Helaire's never done it. Yards per route run, 0.73. Give me a break. Like, I can't find anything to buy into.
Yeah, and just, in the offseason, we got to be awfully careful about some of these news sites. And I do appreciate the work NBC Sports Edge, formerly known as Roto-World, does. But, when they say, where was the Clyde tweet? Yeah. When they tweet, Hill-less KC offense could feature more RB screens, just realize that's an Athletic beat reporter. Just, putting 2 and 2 together and saying without Tyreek Hill, they might need to throw the ball more underneath. This is not like Andy Reid saying, yeah, we're going to throw more screens to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Also outside my top 24 backs at the moment. Dwain, another running back that we both have outside our top 24, maybe a little bit more, controversial here, will be Josh Jacobs as a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. Once again, I've spent, plenty of time, I think, already on the passing game. Long story short, Devontae Adams remains a top 5 fantasy receiver. Hunter Renfrow now more so in that lower end wide receiver 3 range. Who knows who Brian Edwards even is anymore with Darren Waller out there. Yeah, it's okay, but now we have more questions than ever because Lord knows he's not going to be the number 1 pass game option. I'll be happy to let someone draft him if he's going again still in that top 5. The big question here, and we're cool with Derek Carr. He's not going to run, but he's right there, in that Kirk Cousins kind of tier. If you can't get a top 12 quarterback, he's not going to kill you, and he can give you some legit QB1 weeks. With Henry Ruggs last year, Derek Carr was absolutely crushing it, and really was pacing the same as Dak Prescott, considering Dak wasn't running. The question here, Dwayne, is Josh Jacobs. Now, we, as we were going through every signing throughout free agency, we brought up how Brandon Bolden getting signed to the Raiders. There's only 2 teams in the NFL we might care about him going to. The Patriots, who just used him as their pass down back, and the Raiders, who now employ his old offensive coordinator as their head coach. So I would think Brandon Bolden will be primary special teams, but they also added Amir Abdullah, who could all of a sudden be the pass down back. Kenyon Drake is still there. Why should we have any confidence that Josh McDaniels is going to feature Josh Jacobs to the biggest workload of his career? I have none. And I think, he'll lead in total touches, particularly on the ground. We don't really care as much about those. We want those targets. I don't think he's getting many of them, even if he is good enough to do it.
Yeah. And look, Josh Jacobs, he's not a bad player.
No.
He's former first-round pick, 25 years old this season. So a lot of things to like about Josh Jacobs. But looking at the former coordinator, looking at the signings they've made, and look, a lot of teams, if they signed Amir Abdullah, we might not even care. But knowing what this coordinator likes to do, and the fact that I believe Jalen Richard's available, so for me with Jacobs, looking at him his, his rushing grade and all these other things that are fine. His PFF receiving grade is not terrible, compared to other running backs, but it's not good either. Actually been good in pass blocking, which we've seen him stay on the field some and long down a distance where that you're just not going to throw it to your running back, right? You got to throw it down the field. So, he's had some positive things, but overall, I think we're just at the point, where looking at the coach and the match and what we've seen from Jacobs so far and looking at just the structure of the offense, you got Josh Jacobs, you got Kenyon Drake, you got Amir Abdullah, even if you don't count Brandon Bolden. There's Drake and Abdullah, are both better in the passing game than, what you're going to get from Josh Jacobs. So I think that's just the situation that we're in right now. And last year we did have a little stretch run where Josh Jacobs saw that every down treatment, but it's because Kenyon Drake and Jalen Richard were both there.
It was exactly what happened with Antonio Gibson. And some people are forgetting the J.D. McKissick thing with Gibson as well. So, Abdullah, look, when he was in Carolina, he wasn't going to take away from McCaffrey. And when he was in Minnesota, he wasn't taking away from Dalvin. He did take away from Madison and Chuba. And look, McDaniels, he can say he likes Jacobs all he wants. He's been a committee offensive coordinator for the overwhelming duration of his Patriots tenure. I believe only Ridley and Blunt got anywhere close to 300 touches over the past decade or so. So, guys, if he wasn't going to give his own first-round running back, Sony Michel, a true 3-down workload, why would he give it to Josh Jacobs? I will not be making that bet. After the Raiders, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. Not too much has changed here. We're still expecting Justin Herbert to be the freaking man. Keenan Allen, if you want to put him as a wide receiver 1, go for it. I think you'd be hard-pressed to rank him worse than an upside wide receiver 2. Mike Williams is interesting. Dwayne, look, he finished as, I think he was the wide receiver 17 in PPR points per game. And, everyone wants to say, oh, yeah, but take away his good games and, he was only bad. And it's no, we can't do that. He's one of the few receivers receivers in the league with weekly 100-yard, 2-touchdown upside. So that should be worth something, particularly in a format like best ball, where we don't have to worry as much about the duds. So Mike Williams, I think, is someone that, again, is just one of those better in best ball types to keep an eye on. After that, though, going to be tough to get another wide receiver too involved because Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton should be splitting things. Obviously, Austin Eckler, anyone's idea of a top 3 running back, especially full PPR. Need to figure out a little bit what's going on behind him. Justin Jackson, still an unrestricted free agent. Our guess would probably be a committee of sorts, between Kelly and their other guys if Jackson doesn't resign. And yeah, Dwayne, I guess the one big takeaway is I don't think we can really go after this tight end room. Jared Cook is gone, but Gerald Everett is back, looking like he'll be set to split things up with Donald Parham. Maybe they even bring back Steven Anderson as well. They're going to have at least 2 tight ends there. And just historically, man, I don't want to mess with it. Mike, Keenan, and Eckler are going to be their big 3. Why should we go out of our way to get number 4?
Yeah, I think if you want to take Everett late in a draft, it's fine. He's an athletic profile receiver. You can go for. Tight end, you can go for it. But we got to see him already last year, and he did okay. He was okay last year with Russ as whenever he was healthy. But I'm with you. It's really just more about Keenan Allen's the 1. Eckler, is the 2, and Mike Williams is the 3. That's the order I would put it in as far as the way the targets are probably going to shake out. Could Mike Williams take a step ahead of Eckler? Yeah, I think that's in the range of outcomes. He had a career high 21% targets per route run last season, a career high 1.97 yards per route run. If you look at him though, even his adjusted target share, which he only missed him one game last year, but it's right at 18%. So still, Mike Williams has never put up this. He's never even hit 20% target share, in his career. And that's the one thing that concerns me. I love the quarterback he's playing with. I love the offense that he's on. But we also have a defense that's going to be pretty badass for the Chargers next year. The things they've done to really position that defense, golly, adding J.C. Jackson. They added a defensive lineman, from the Rams. You added Khalil Mack to help add pressure with Bosa. Get Derwin James, for a full healthy season. They drafted Asante Samuel Jr., the year before. They just got a lot of things, positive momentum going for them, also with a great mind on the defensive side of the ball with Staley. So I think that could impact what the Chargers need to do on offense a little bit as well. So with Williams, he's a guy I'm kind of, I know we'll come back to him next week when we talk ranks, but he's a player that I'm probably going to think about a lot this weekend as I work my way back through some of these things. And some of these offenses that are more set, I'm going to go ahead and do my projections for. So the Chargers are a team, I think you can basically project their offense right now. Probably not going to get anything changed in the draft. And so looking at Williams, I don't know, you can tell me where you have him. I have him at 25 right now.
Ooh.
I think he has the upside.
24. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. So we're close. There's still some red flags. He's never shown this dominant profile. But again, you have that early part of the season last year that gets me. And his ADOT definitely came down. So I think there is a chance he becomes more involved, and he got injured. So that's the other thing I'm accounting for. Last year he got hurt, really was not the same after that. No. So that's what's keeping him closer to the wide receiver 2 conversation for me. I do think his range of outcomes is he finishes in the bottom end, right, of the wide receiver 3 tier as well.
Yeah, wide receiver 28 right now, ADP on Underdog. Obviously got that $20 million per year deal. Hey, Mike Williams, man, just had 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. And it wasn't the easiest ones. He had the big Week 18 game, which, the Tyler Lockett special, basically, in fantasy football land. But, just keep in mind, it is Justin Herbert's likely number 2 pass game option at the end of the day. You can do a lot worse than having that guy on the fantasy squad. Los Angeles Rams, Matt Stafford, nice little extension to be the Rams' long-term quarterback, as if he wasn't going to be, obviously, after that fantastic playoff run. At running back, still the Cam Akers show. Sony Michel remains an unrestricted free agent. We do still have Darrell Henderson there, and let's not forget, Henderson was out for that playoff run until the Super Bowl, when he actually did come in and all of a sudden play. I believe 30% of those snaps, actually got a lot of work as a receiver, while Akers wasn't really getting the ball quite as much there. Tight end should still be Tyler Higbee. Now, a wide receiver, this is where things get a little more interesting. Cooper Kupp, obviously still locked in as the, probably most fed receiver in the entire NFL. Behind him, though, it is now strictly Allen Robinson as the wide receiver 2 with Robert Woods being shipped off to the Titans. And OBJ, man, it's like we've heard from the beginning the Rams want to bring him back, but here he is still sitting as an unrestricted free agent. And all of a sudden we're starting to hear, see all the photoshops of him in a Chiefs and Packers uniform, all that heating up as well. So let's say OBJ isn't back or his recovery leaves him sidelined for, a good chunk of the season, Dwain. What are we making of Allen Robinson? Because, again, can't overstate how much of a better QB situation this is for him. Then again, he is 29, and let's face it, he was bad last year. I see the target totals, and I see, the Bears not exactly helping him. Matt Nagy sure wasn't calling, the best plays in the league or anything. But Allen Robinson, man, Stafford's number 2. We saw what, change of scenery did for OBJ. Why can't the same thing happen for A-Rob?
Yeah, I like Allen Robinson now with Robert Woods moving on. So, I think when you look at, and I don't know where his ADP is going to settle in, obviously wherever it's at now, it's going to change versus where it will be. But the encouraging thing is targets, his adjusted target share over the years, 22%, 23%, 23%, 23%, 26%, 24%. Last year, it went to 16%. Actually, that's probably wrong because it's probably still dividing by 16 games instead of 17. So it's going to be a little bit different than that. But still, I think that, the thing for me is do you really, what you have to think of with Robinson, is do you think that he truly just hit a cliff, or do you think he was playing with injuries? Maybe also a little bit of, I'm just sick of this stuff with the Bears, and you think there's a recharge to his energy and just really his approach to the game coming back and now getting to play for a chance, in the NFC right now that's wide open, potentially for another to go to the Super Bowl, get to play with the best quarterback of your career. I'm kind of leaning into, I like what I'm thinking about Allen Robinson. And so I don't have him inside my top 24, but I have him at 26. So, I've got him really close. So I'm kind of, if you're truly all in, you believe that it was just, a one-off issue. And again, to your point, he is getting older. He'll be 29 this year, but we've seen a lot of receivers still be really good at 29.
Yeah, okay.
32, 33, 34, that's where for sure you're hitting the cliffs. But he is in the range where we see guys that will just start to drop off. So that's what you have to decide. Last year, was that the beginning of the end as far as he's hitting that drop off, or was it just, some other factors at play? And now he's in a way better situation. I'm leaning more to the latter, but remembering, the fact that, hey, it really could have been a performance while he's starting to run into. So that'll help me maintain my exposure levels around him. But and again, these right now he's 43 on underdog. That's going to change for sure, right? That's just based on data that's too old. My guess is he'll climb into probably about where I've got him. I would guess he'll end up being in the top 30 receivers going off the board.
I have him 31, same tier. I would just put, the Denver guys, probably Michael Thomas, maybe Brandon Cooks ahead of him for pure target volume. But hey, maybe he will be efficient enough to make it work in LA. Last thing, let's talk about Cam Akers, because some people are still just sticking with him as, the potential second coming of Todd Gurley. We know Sean McVay over the years has shown a willingness to feed his guy. Dwayne, I'm concerned because he had the role for a second in the playoffs and then he lost it. Henderson's back. They keep using high round picks on running backs. I know they don't have a first round pick, but they have other ways they can look at the position. You have him RB15. I think that's exactly where I have him. If we have him RB15, I don't think we're going to be getting Cam Akers in many places. It feels like a trap, man. It feels like a trap to treat Cam Akers as legit top 5, top 8 backs, but yet we have some people doing that. Are they wrong or are we wrong, Dwayne?
Yeah, I think people probably want us to disagree more on some of these things. I'm sure we will as we get more into ranks and things like that. But yeah, just looking overall at Cam Akers, look, man, it's and some of it, look, he's coming back from the injury. They probably brought him back a little too soon. And so I'm going to give him some benefit of the doubt, right? One, monster coming back from it. Two, our expectations probably got a little too high, even on the volume that he was getting. So I'm gonna lean into the fact that some of what we have seen with Cam Akers, as far as not hitting some of the explosive metrics, things like that we know that we want to see, probably did tie back, to his injury. But I am also with you. I think that Darrell Henderson has played well enough that is there really a reason that they would just give Cam Akers the backfield? I think there's enough question there that I'm just not going to have Akers ranked high enough, to your point, to probably be able to get a ton of shares.
Dude, this is what happened last year. So he comes back in week 18. Now, it's Awesome. It's an awesome story. I get that. Same thing with like the Teddy Bridgewater injury. It's awesome, but we can't just draft guys in fantasy football because they're a good story or whatever. So it comes back in week 18, doesn't do anything. Wild card round, has the 40-yard catch from OBJ. He had some nice runs, even though the efficiency wasn't there. He looked like he was back enough to the point that the Rams go ahead and give him 27 touches on 81% snaps against the Buccaneers. What happened after that? Sony Michel outsnaps him in the NFC Championship game. Then the Super Bowl, 57% snaps with Henderson getting a lot of the pass down work. So maybe it changes, but yeah, man, how many times does Sean McVay kind of need to see his lead RB become a shell of himself before he does start to put forward a little bit more of a committee? Again, RB15, that's an upside RB2. We anticipate Akers leading the way, but it's awfully tough, to put him ahead of guys like a Fournette, like a Connor, someone that we're just far more certain is going to have that every down role.
I agree.
Miami Dolphins up next. Much like the Chiefs, we've already talked about them a lot, particularly in the pass game. So don't need to touch, I think, on really too many of these wide receivers. Just keep an eye on if Devontae Parker will get shipped anywhere. Because if he doesn't, man, it's going to be awfully crowded. One of Cedric Wilson or Mike Gesicki especially are going to be the odd man out. And I would say with Mike Gesicki, he's someone that you're going to want to be fading if he's anywhere close to that top 12 valuation. There's just not really any room in the offense, particularly with Tyreek, Waddle, Cedric Wilson, who are three of the more used slot receivers in the NFL, or at least were last year. How about the backfield, though, Dwayne? We have Chase Edmonds coming over on a fairly hefty deal. I believe fetched him $12 million overall. We also have Raheem Mostert there. It's kind of funny to me how seemingly nobody was giving Raheem Mostert hype going to last offseason other than myself. That really worked out, Ian. But now all of a sudden, we're getting him in graphics alongside Waddle and Tyreek, just talking about all the speed on the field. Being with Mike McDaniel, his old OC, certainly helps. What do you make of this backfield? Historically, guys like Edmonds changing teams for the big dollar amounts isn't great. I think Mostert being there kind of shows that they're not exactly signing up to give Edmonds a 3-down role. I don't think either guy needs to be in our top 24, but they're not being priced that way. So do you think Edmonds, if the price stays right, and even maybe Mostert, could be like the sort of guys that zero RB, anchor RB lineups could be looking to attack later in the middle rounds?
Yeah, I think there's the potential for it. My big concern with Edmonds at this point is just really how many targets is he going to get when you've got Tyreek Hill there, you've got Jalen Waddle, who's going to be working probably close to the line of scrimmage a lot. You're going to get, we'll talk about Gesicki in a second, not really high on Gesicki anymore, but he's going to get some targets, Cedric Wilson, also a player that can do a lot of work around the line of scrimmage. So my biggest concern for Edmonds is if he ends up being the speed back, which he most likely will be in the offense, the other plus you want to get from that is that he's also the passing down back. My concern now is I just don't think there's going to be as many targets. And Edmonds has been really his targets per route run for his career are nice, 20%, 19%, 21%. 20%. So even though his target shares, have been 5, 3, 11, and 9, his underlyings tell us that when he's out there, he gets targeted quite a bit, more than what most running backs in the league do. And his yards per route run have been nice, 1.23, 1.32. The problem, so I would love that profile if they hadn't grabbed Hill. I think just adding Hill as well probably caps that a little bit. So I like Edmonds. I'm with you. I put him as a high-end RB3 with an opportunity to climb into that RB2 status. I do think he's going to split the backfield. I think he will lead the backfield in touches, but I don't think we're going to see 70%, go to him. Now you got to bake that into his range of outcomes. The thing I will say with Edmonds, being a younger player, he's going to be 26.4 when the season starts this season. He has shown explosive playability, which I really love. His explosive play rate is up there. So think Elijah Mitchell, right? I think that's what they're looking at, giving that kind of upside to the game. So if the Dolphins offense performs, there are paths to upside with Edmonds, even at his current ADP. I will say that. So I'm going to have exposure to him. I think his ADP will probably continue to creep though, upward, and it may get to now's probably a good time to go ahead and draft him. Let's put it that way. Because I do think that he's a guy that as the offseason goes on, people are going to look at that dead zone, and he's going to be one of the ones that are like, I don't mind taking a stab on this guy because he's a younger player. He's been explosive. He could be involved in the passing game. So he checks a lot of potential boxes. So if he starts to creep up, like I can see him getting up into, what's his ADP right now, Ian? Do you have it up? My computer's kind of acting crazy, so I don't want to sort on anything. You may lose me.
You have him RB 26. I have him RB 31, I believe.
I was talking about his ADP.
I know. I'm getting to that.
Okay, sorry.
He is a little bit higher. What the hell is he? RB 39. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so you should be drafting him now.
Yeah.
I think he will end up being drafted more close to where we have him ranked, to be honest. And he could get a little bit past it.
Behind Melvin Gordon, absolutely not. Behind Ramondre Stevenson, screw that. Yeah.
See, that's just not updated. It'd be interesting. I wish like the way they would slice that data. That's the cool thing about Fantasy Mojo over at FFPC. Like you can just go look at like the last 15 days of data. So we'll do that next week whenever we're going through ranks. We'll relook at some of these things.
Minnesota Vikings, our next squad to break down. Mostly just the band getting back together. Kirk Cousins, signed an extension to be the quarterback for at least another season. Dalvin Cook, let's not forget, is going through some, legal turmoil. And that is why, as we probably mentioned for the fifth time here, we do love Alexander Madison. Not someone you need to overly reach on, but again, he has potential standalone flex value in a new offense. And as we saw last year, when Dalvin is out, if he's out, for one reason or another, let's remember those shoulders aren't exactly, in the best state either. Madison instantly becomes in the RB1 conversation. At wide receiver should once again be Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and KJ Osborne. Don't expect Osborne to see enough reps. I've also barked, I think, enough throughout this offseason about the potential for Irv Smith to really be a late round darling. So far, they've only signed Johnny Munt from the Rams. He's a block first option. My guy Chris Herndon's still an unrestricted free agent. Give him a chance, somebody, please. But yeah, with Irv Smith, love him, as that, tight end, in that 15 to 25 range where you can feasibly talk yourself into any of them. I am hanging my hat on Irv Smith this year. Again, though, Dwayne, look, Justin Jefferson, if you want to rank him wide receiver 1 over Cooper Kupp, I think you're maybe trying to draw a little bit of attention to yourself. I'm not so sure it's, something that you can rationally put together that much because I just think Kupp has the higher target ceiling, but whatever. We're talking about wide receiver 1 versus wide receiver 2. Any way you put it, I think. What about Adam Thielen, though? And again, I told Hayden Winks this last night because he was the one that brought it to my attention. I'm going to give Hayden Winks a lot of credit for the Thielen call for 2 weeks before acting like it was my idea all along. But at least for now, shout out to Hayden for that. Adam Thielen, man, he's going as a low-end wide receiver 3 when all the damn guy does is score touchdowns, Dwayne. I get it. The hamstring injury is not ideal. He has been a little bit banged up over the years. He's over 30, but he's going to be back, and all he does is score touchdowns on the field. Why not take a stab at Adam Thielen, as cheap as he has been in years?
Yeah, and I think there's also the potential that does Adam Thielen kick inside and play more of a slot role in O'Connell's offense. KJ Osborne played there last year, but I think, Thielen is a guy that could do that and kind of gives you, not saying he's Cooper Kupp and it isn't just because he's white, but like he's a great route technician. He understands zones. He knows how to work them. And we've seen KJ Osborne kick outside and be able to still provide like that deep threat type of a target down the field. So like, that's something I'm really going to be paying attention to this preseason. Like I'm really going to be dialed in on, there's multiple teams because there's a lot of coaching changes before the Vikings, just listening in to hear how they're planning on using this personnel. Cause I think you can expect a lot of 11 personnel. Whereas in the past we had seen more 12 personnel, right? Under the Kubiak style, whether you want to talk Gary, Clint, Stefanski, whenever he was running the offense with Kubiak, basically helping him, lots of those heavy set personnel groupings. We now are going to have more of a McVay style offense. They actually have the weapons to make that make sense. They've moved on. They don't have the tight ends that they used to have. They used to have Rudolph and Conklin and Irv Smith. Now it's just Irv Smith. So I think we're going to see a ton of 11 personnel. So I think there is potential for Adam Thielen to get to also slide inside in the slot. And to your point, like he's going to be older, but he's 32. And the way Adam Thielen wins, he's not like a guy,
right,
just burning people down the field. Right. He's a guy that's going to create separation. He's a guy that can work inside. And to your point, a great target in the red zone. So I do agree that Adam Thielen, right now is a guy we should consider. The thing that holds him back the most is the age and the fact that we've just basically seen it, over the last 3 seasons, 10 games, 15 games, 13 games. A lot of times I know we're like, hey, guys are injured until they're not. Well, injuries and older players is something that when you combine those two things together, it concerns me more because I think we see this a lot of times with these guys once they get to the end of their career. And not saying Adam Thielen's done. Like, he could play another 3 or 4 years for all I know. But he is at that point where I'm definitely not going to project him at, 17 games.
Bro, he scored 10 touchdowns last year.
I know.
13 games. This is nuts.
14 the year before. Yeah.
24 touchdowns in his last 28 games. Like, it is insane what he and Kirk are able to do. And yeah, he's not Justin Jefferson. That's okay. That's fine. Look, Kupp's going, like, if you want to just look at it and use that same Rams parallel, which is reasonable considering, Kevin O'Connell, like A-Rob, we just talked about him being this low end upside wide receiver 3. Is Adam Thielen arbitrage Allen Robinson? Dwayne, is that what we're getting to?
Yeah, I think obviously he's older than Robinson, but yeah, I think so. And I think they belong in probably right there in that same tier. Like right now, I don't even have it up in front of me again. Like, my computer's starting to act normal again now. I don't know what was going on. Like, all my resources were gone. I was like, I can't touch anything. So looking at Thielen, I've got him at 36 right now. So I've got him in that wide receiver 3 tier. But yeah, I agree with Hayden. I think, like, I like the way you put it earlier. Come week 1, where's Adam Thielen going to be ranked? And then once the week 1 game happens and he scores the 2 touchdowns, where's he going to be in week 2, right? All of a sudden, then you're going to see him, in the top 15. The question is just, can Thielen keep it up, the whole season? I think that's the main thing you got to look at.
New England Patriots up next. Man, like, this offense, I think if you don't have a single Patriot on your fantasy team like this year, it's not going to be a bad thing. Nothing against these guys. Maybe Mac Jones makes a nice year 2 leap, but it's just going to be crowded. The backfield brought in Ty Montgomery and brought back James White. The contract, for both guys, it's not huge, only $500K guarantee for James White, just $300 for Ty Montgomery. So not a guarantee they're on the roster. Either way, though, it looks like that Ramondre Stevenson is not going to be getting anything close to, that pass down plus some early down work role that we were hoping for. So Stevenson, to me, people are still just holding on to, 1 or 2 pretty dope runs, a little bit too much, some of the, to Dwayne's point out, Jay Moore and Matt Waldman, some of the smarter guys out there. I feel like it might have been Jay Moore that brought this up, but them even talking about Leonard Fournette coming in there, to me, is just a negative for Stevenson, because it was never going to be Harris to get that pass down work. It was going to be Stevenson, if at all. And now it's looking like, the answer to that is just going to be a no. So Harris should continue to be a lead early down back, but he's once again going to be splitting it up. Who knows if the Patriots are going to be as dominant as they were last year? They were blowing dudes out, one of the best point differentials in the AFC, and that helped these early down backs. So if anything, I'm subscribing to the adage of take the cheapest Patriots running back available and use a late round pick on probably White, maybe even Montgomery. But again, if the answer is just no, I'm okay with that. Jacoby Myers is back in action. Should be him, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne. Dwayne, everyone's fine at a price, but once again, is anyone getting you excited in New England?
For me with Stevenson, like, I like him in best ball because I think he still gives you spike week potential. Damian Harris is a very physical back. The propensity to take on injuries is probably there with Harris. So I think you're going to get some games where it really is the Stevenson, getting to play the Harris role. The way I look at it is Damian Harris is kind of like, they've always had really like the early down banger. I think that's still going to be Damian Harris. Then you have the true passing down back. That's probably James White. To your point, didn't spend a lot of money on him. So if they cut him, that ends up being a positive for Stevenson. But then when you look at Stevenson, they've also always had kind of the jack of all trades back. He can play some on passing downs, can help relieve the early down back.
The Rex Burkhead role.
The Rex Burkhead. I said that last year and people went nuts on me. Man, you're an idiot. You see this perfectly blocked run in the preseason where he ran for 70 yards? Yeah, Rex Burkhead could also do that if it was perfectly blocked and all he had to do was run. Well, maybe not. Stevenson's probably faster. But anyway.
Burkhead sent them the Super Bowl. Like, I'm sorry. I know he's 33 now, people, but the guy was a pretty good running back in the day.
Yeah, like a good all-around player. Yeah. So with Stevenson, he did have the 1.66 yards per route run last year. Now, didn't run a ton of routes. Only had 94 plays where he was in a route. So, you can't get too carried away with that. But there are some underlying things there to say he could be that true jack of all trades. So what that does, I like Stevenson in best ball because, one, you could have an injury to Harris or James White that opens up new path to opportunity for Stevenson to see a little bit, of work. And I think he still could like Rex Burkhead and some of these other guys used to do, come through on a 1 week spike week type of basis. And maybe you get 3 or 4 weeks in the season, even when they're all playing, where he scores a couple touchdowns, and he gives you some value. So I do think Stevenson can still give you value at pick 108 in ADP. Most likely a guy that I'm going to try to get exposure to when he slides past his ADP. Not a guy like, we'll talk about this more as the season gets closer, but there's going to be certain guys where I'm targeting at and past ADP. Not going to reach on guys very often unless I'm just trying to get some exposure at the end of draft season. Then there's going to be a group of players that's like, I'm not going to go nuts about them at ADP, but pretty much anytime they fall past, that's where I'm going to try to that's how I want to gain my entry into getting, some ownership around that player. Sorry, rostership. So with that said, Stevenson's really the one. I'm with you on White. I don't mind taking a stab on White late. I am a little concerned with that contract. It gives me just enough of a pause where I'm like, man, could they just cut him? Is that possible? I kind of surprised that, with James White and his history there, I kind of thought he might get, they're looking at a couple million, over a couple of seasons. That kind of surprised me, the contract.
Montgomery's a wide receiver and underdog. Is that any sort of exploitation? It's like the Lynn Bowden.
I don't think it's exploitable now. I think what would have to happen is we would need
White gets cut.
White gets cut, White gets injured, something like that. Then Montgomery ends up giving you value. I think taking a stab on him now is probably a waste of pick.
Man, I'm knocking on wood, but this
I just love the way you say Montgomery. It makes me always think of Mount Rushmore or something. And I think wow, David Montgomery's on it. Ty Montgomery's on it.
I had the biggest
two or the other.
I was beefing Harvard Montgomery from 2018 to 2020 when he kept rocking 88. And it was like, why does this dirt average running back get to be the only guy in the league to break the freaking number rule? And then Nathan Yonke, our guy, PFF Nathan, brought up how I was being a hypocrite with my love for Cordero Patterson rocking 84. And then the whole league said, screw numbers meaning anything anyway. So now I got to just tip Ty Montgomery, not David. My God.
I hope the Patriots do something on offense in the draft, because right now it's like, ugh, I don't like this. I don't like this offense. There's nothing that I really get excited about.
CC Chris Olave, perhaps. Ooh, New Orleans Saints up next. Famous Jameis Winston under center. I talk a little bit in the solo pod about Jameis. Okay, he had the huge week 1. He had another QB3 performance. Other than that, he was outside the top 25 basically every week. The only year of his career that he's been a consistent QB1 was in 2019 when he obviously also threw the 30 interceptions. So Jameis, I get it. He's fun. I really have my doubts, though, that he's going to be unleashed in a fantasy-friendly manner. He doesn't run, and they barely even let him pass last year. So barring, a big change, just not really going to be too high in on Jameis other than as a late-round dart. Alvin Kamara, like Dalvin Cook, it does find himself in some legal problems, so keep an eye on that. We need to see what they're going to do at backup running back. Is Mark Ingram, I guess, their RB2 that he signed deal that
he is their RB2 right now. I've got him in the ranks. It's low, but I've got him in there.
For some, I'm not sure if Kamara is serious enough that he could be looking at a suspension. My God, Mark Ingram, as a RB2 in the year 2022.
I don't want to overreact with Kamara, but we're going to be 27. He does have the receiving profile that helps, but targets per route run have gone from 33% to 29% to 27%. He had another 30 in 2020, but then last year down to 24%. That was a career low. Second lowest season of his career in yards per route run. Still good, though, for a running back. 1.62 is freaking great for a back. We've seen him he's had 3 years as a rookie with over 2 yards per route run, which is freaking nuts to see that. So, and then just looking at some of his other, underlying metrics. So if you look at his breakaway attempts, so that's carries of 15 or more, career low, 2.5%. Explosive rushing attempts, which is the one I like more, which is carries of 10 yards or more, 9%, a career low. Ooh. So lots of career lows last year for Alvin Kamara. You have to at least question legal issues coming in, and are we starting to see a potential deterioration of the skill set? The positive on Kamara is folks are pricing some of this in already. And you just have what could be a freaking terrible offense. You've lost Sean Payton. It matters. You just lost Sean Payton. You don't really have a lot of weapons. Jameis, you just mentioned, there's a lot of questions around Kamara.
Michael Thomas should be back in action, and my God, he's looking like their only wide receiver at this point. Traquan Smith, still free agent. Kenny Stills, who was actually on the squad last year, free agent. Deontay Harris, though, is projecting right now as their number 2 wide receiver, and Deontay Hardy, excuse me.
That was going to throw me off for a while.
Still got to get.
You can't even search him on PFF and find him. You still have to put Harris.
Right now, Deontay Hardy / Harris. Hardy, Deontay Hardy. Wide receiver, like outside the top 100 on Underdog. So, another candidate for like your last round pick. It's funny, like if, any other fantasy analysts out there probably know what I'm talking about. But if you do like any sort of efficiency study on wide receivers from last year, like you're going to see like 5, 6, 7 great receivers. And then Deontay Harris. So credit to him last year, made the most out of his opportunities and was the recipient of several bombs from Jameis. I think the big question right now, we've talked a little about Alvin Kamara. Again, Deontay Hardy, you can throw him a late round dart if you want. What to make of Michael Thomas? He's someone that going into last year, man, expecting him to be healthy, I had him as a top 10 receiver. Now we're seeing him priced really outside the top 20. I hear you with the offense having concerns, but my God, who else is there to throw the ball to?
No, I think Jameis can be enough to feed Michael Thomas. Like that doesn't concern me. Like I was completely out on Thomas last year at ADP, so I had zero exposure, but this year, I think I'm going to have some. Every year is its own thing. And if you put it best, we don't hate players, we hate ADP. Yeah. So that dictates a lot of really, how we should think about really, our strategy and the way we want to use to deploy our resources, which are, to begin, our fantasy draft picks, right? Later we deal with free agency, that kind of stuff. But yeah, as far as looking at Michael Thomas for me right now, I think I'm going to have him in the wide receiver 3 range. It does concern me. We've basically been 2 years since we've seen Thomas. We are going to have a lesser version of the offense. But I do think that you could I would feel more comfortable if someone, even at his age, someone wanted to make the argument of Michael Thomas getting 100 receptions than Juju, even though Juju is 26. Because we've seen Thomas really put that in the range of outcomes, not just based on the volume of an offense, but truly being able to demand the targets. The only question is he still the same player physically? Can he continue to demand? I think the positive for him is he's always been more of an intermediate route option. He works inside. They put him in motion a lot. I think they'll still do those things. You get him inside against linebackers and safeties and the zone coverage schemes. I think those are still positive things that if Michael Thomas's mind is right and he's committed to this, I think he can still come through and outproduce ADP.
Michael Thomas, though, let's check this out. Career, and I've barked about this a lot, but what's one more time gonna hurt? Slant route, 6.44 yards per route run, number 1 among 145 qualified wide receivers. On comeback and hitches, he's number 2. Ends, posts, and crossing routes, he's number 6. Out and corner routes, 41st out of 130. Goes, wheels, fades, general deep routes, 24th out of 98. Screens, he's 88th. So, guys, he's more than just a slant guy. Don't freaking hate the man for doing something that apparently everyone knows is coming, yet they still can't stop him from being the most efficient wide receiver in the game at running.
And just real quick on that, people need to keep in perspective. The slant is one of the most utilized passes in all of the NFL. Slants and hitches are huge. They're a huge part of every offense almost. So, you got to take some of this with a grain of salt. Yes, does Thomas get a lot of volume on slants? Yeah, but a lot of receivers, a big portion of what they're doing comes on slants. It just so happens that Michael Thomas has had seasons, where he's seeing, nearly 200 targets. So it's much more pronounced and people notice it, but it's not that huge of a deal. Slant boy. I grew up with my kids watching Shark Boy and Lava Girl. It's Slant Boy and I don't know what else.
New York Football Giants up next. It concerns me in March when I'm excited about teams like the New York Giants, but here we are. Daniel Jones, the quarterback. Y'all, once again, Tyrod Taylor signed as the backup. Really the ideal backup. If Trubisky was here, then we'd have to worry about an open competition. No doubt in my mind that Daniel Jones will be under center in week 1. And lest we forget, weeks 1 through 4 last year, dude, I believe already had 3 top 12 finishes. So he does have some upside. And now he's got the same coach that that helped Josh Allen be a great fantasy quarterback before he also became a great real life quarterback. So Daniel Jones right now is my favorite late round, quarterback to get. He's going as like QB 27, 28. So you can really get him at the very end of drafts. Again, I'm not saying in your, 10-team league with your friends how you're going to lean on Daniel Jones as your QB1, more so super flex, best ball type of thinking there. It gets interesting after that, Dwayne. The wide receiver room is awfully crowded. We got to see how Sterling Shepard comes back from injury. Still have Kenny Galladay, Darius Slayton, also Kadarius Toney, who we're hoping takes a step forward, obviously flashed a lot last year, had a high yards per route run, even had over 50 targets on the season. So he qualifies for a lot of these good lists. Again, just confusing where that ball is going to go around. Also need to make sure if Ricky Seals-Jones is going to be their undisputed tight end one, or if they're going to bring back, a Caden Smith, a Levine, Toriololo, one of those type of guys and make things more split. So keep an eye on RSJ. It's looking good. The wide receiver room, we got to hash out a little bit. The big question that I was coming to in the ranks, Dwayne, is are we going to be scared off from Saquon? Because we were on him last year. We were, I think, on the right side of history until we got the freaking fluke of all fluke injuries when he lands on his own teammate's foot against the Cowboys and set him back. But let's face it, wasn't exactly good coming back from that injury after. I guess my question is, looking ahead to next season, we do have a coach that we saw in Buffalo give Devin Singletary the every down role. We've heard the potential for Saquon to be traded, but I wouldn't say it's a situation that we should necessarily be assured it's going to happen. Saquon Barkley is being grouped in with a lot of RB2s that he should have a larger workload than.
Yeah, I mean, look, last year Saquon didn't look good early in the season. He wasn't explosive, but he was coming off the injury. Just as he was starting to hit his stride, to your point, he got picked up another injury. So I think the big question with Barkley is he still the explosive player that he once was? Because he is a player that, takes on a lot of negative plays, but he overcomes it, kind of like what we talked about with Swift. He can overcome it with the really big play. Miles Sanders kind of in that same group, Travis Etienne in that same group. The question is, does he still have the explosiveness? And we just don't know. We don't know. I tend to think that, man, the type of athlete Barkley is, and the work ethic that he's going to have towards it, if he can just stay healthy in training camp and out of the gate, he's a player that I don't know how much I want to gain exposure to Barkley way early in draft season, Ian, but if I see him looking healthy, looking good, we're getting maybe 2 weeks away from the season, I'm probably going to ramp up my exposure to Barkley because I don't think he's really going to go up in ADP. I think people are done. I think people are just like, man, I can't do it. There's certain players that everyone gets to that point on. And I think that's kind of where Barkley is. People are just like, I'm done. I'm over it. People are doing it with Zeke.
What's so different between Barkley and James Conner, man? We saw James Conner do
way better offense for Conner, but that's it. You're right. You're on the right path. I agree. But I think that we could make an argument that, man, Barkley doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him. No. He's had the injuries, but he doesn't have a ton of carries on him. So if that explosiveness still is in there, it's in there somewhere and it's residing in there. And now you got Evan Ingram gone. You got Sterling Shepard coming off injury, age 30 season. Kenny Galladay, should be better. He was injured early last year, never got on the same page with Daniel Jones, but he's going to be more downfield. I think there's an opportunity, and we know that Saquon can work out of the backfield. He's going to be out there on passing downs. Yeah, I think there is a path to him really, outperforming ADP. I think he has to be explosive, though, right? The other two guys, Fournette and Conner, the volume projection is probably going to be similar, but they're on better offenses. So Barkley's going to need the big plays to help carry the day for him. And that's the thing that we won't know until we get to hear a little bit more about him. We make sure that he's healthy fully in training camp.
And I have Barkley behind Conner and Fournette, but I don't want to only penalize Barkley for being on a bad offense and just ignore that for David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift. I think we do that sometimes where we're not, equally, weighting certain variables for every running back. So I do think the Giants could take a nice step forward. I understand it's been a while since we've seen the Giants making smart decisions, but you look at their coaching staff and everything they've done in this offseason, Dwayne, from a real life football perspective, I feel like the needle is pointing up in New York. And when we can get Saquon really as cheap as ever, now fully healthy going to the year, we don't need to worry about them ramping him up to begin with. I think Saquon, man, could be a screaming value. Yeah. We both have him ranked ahead of Cam Akers. I have him ranked as RB8 right now, which I was having a nervous breakdown even looking at that. So I might need to drop it a little bit. That's extreme.
Well, here's the good news. I think, look, this is us being transparent about the way we think about these things. We want to help you guys win your drafts,
Yes.
right? That's step one. Then we get into free agency and all that as the season goes on.
All I want in this world, Dwain.
Exactly. You and me, we're aligned on it. That's what we want. So sometimes when we work through the rankings, and we'll talk about projections and where we haven't projected versus the way we're ranking them, Saquon's probably going to project better than what we're going to rank. But the main thing is if you want folks to take Barkley, you don't have to have him way higher, right? You just need to have him a little above where industry ADP is to help keep people on him, but not overdrafting him. Because the one problem we have to be careful of when we get a guy too high is then all of a sudden, someone sends us a DM like, man, I got Barkley on all 10 teams ready to rock you. And you're like, oh shit. Like, no, that wasn't what I necessarily intended. So like, and we'll talk through these things like as we're going through the offseason. We talk about rankings, talk about projections, all that different stuff. But with Barkley, I think I don't disagree with your thought process. I think the biggest ding on him is his offense and can he be explosive? So in year one of his career, 12% of his carries went for 10 yards or more. Year two, 12% of his carries went for 10 plus yards. 2020 went down to 5%. Last year it was at 6%. So is the 12%er still in there? Is the 10%? Could we get 10%? I think if you get to like 10% on Barkley, like, again, he will outperform ADP because right now I don't have a doubt that the volume is coming as long as he's healthy.
He just turned 25, and for my money's worth, prime Saquon is still the best running back I've seen of the last 5 years at least. New York Jets next up. Don't have to worry about the tight end position again, even though they put a lot of money towards it. CJ Uzomah and Tyler Conklin basically expected to cancel each other out for fantasy purposes. Need to keep an eye on this backfield, but so far so good for Michael Carter. I mean, Tevin Coleman got brought back. We all understand that Coleman, we should all understand that Coleman, was a thorn in the side of Carter last year. But I was going through it a little closer, Dwain, and it did seem like Carter was starting to pull away. Week 16, Coleman was healthy. Carter was healthy. Carter started and played like 70% of the offensive snaps. Unfortunately, the next week against the Buccaneers, he got concussed on like the 5th or 6th play, even though he was already racking up a good chunk of yards. So he didn't finish out that game, obviously. And then they played him week 18, but understandably, last game of the year, lost season, just got concussed the week before, didn't give him that big of a role. So I do wonder if he didn't get concussed and we had a nice 3-game sample at the end of the year of Carter working as the every down back, if we would have been a little higher on him. We got to get through the draft, though. Let's face it, before we can really move Carter up, anywhere inside that top 20. So with that situation still a little bit up in the air, what are we thinking about wide receiver? As we saw in the Tyreek trade, the Jets were really trying to go and get their guy. And you would think that Braxton Berrios would have been the odd man out from that deal. But man, $7 million in guaranteed money isn't exactly anything to scoff at. Does the Tyreek Hill interest that the Jets had scare you at all about assuming Elijah Moore will be able to live up to this like top 20 value he's kind of being pigeonholed for right now?
Yeah, the way I'm approaching Elijah Moore, and I've got him right now at 17 in my ranks, and I feel good about it. Like, look, he came out and he did what he needed to do, and he played through injuries, targets per route run, 24%, yards per route run, 1.75. The big thing, 73.8 PFF receiving grade, just missed that 75 cutoff. But again, a ton of really good hits in that next group down, graded 70, basically just under 75 to 65, whenever they were a first or second round pick. Elijah Moore qualifies for that, for a second round pick. And again, playing, on a offense that wasn't that good with a quarterback, learning things. So I still love Elijah Moore, but the way I'm approaching him right now in best ball, I'm not drafting Elijah Moore right now in my best ball drafts. I mean, I'm occasionally doing it because you want to get some mix of him with some of the running backs you're taking later, but I'm not prioritizing him. And the reason why is like Drake London's been linked like to the Jets, and he's being linked to the Jets by like reporters that, know those teams like Daniel Jeremiah, like he's got that strong connection with that front office. So I think there's a strong chance that we see the Jets take a receiver in the first round of the draft, if not picking up one in the second round of the draft. So where I'm going with this, Elijah Moore's ADP is probably as high as it's going to get right now this season. Yeah. If the Jets don't draft a wide receiver, it's not going to move up. People right now are looking at Elijah Moore as he is the 1A on the offense. So it's already all baked into his ADP. So on a player like that, the way I want to handle it is I want to wait. And we talked about earlier, Michael Carter right now, I'm splitting the difference because if they don't draft it back, he's going to move up in ADP. If they draft a back, he's going to fall in ADP. Right now on Underdog, he's going off the board as running back 23. So I'm trying to take a balanced approach. And it's not like I've done hundreds of drafts. I've only done a few of them. This was more me just talking about my strategy that's in my mind. I haven't necessarily applied it like the 50 draft rooms. But like if I were drafting 100 times, that's my approach that I would have on Carter, Javonte Williams. I mean, there's other guys I would split the difference on them. I want to get some exposure now, but I want to leave myself room to add more exposure later at a better ADP. But with more, I'm hanging back right now on more because I think either he's going to stay at his ADP or it's going to go lower if they draft one.
Be a pretty fire article, Dwayne, if you just kind of highlighted 10 guys or so like Elijah that you're just like, hey, their price as high as they're going to be right now, maybe chill and we'll attack them after the draft. Just saying, trying to tell you what to do, man.
No, I've tweeted some about it. And I did talk about it like in my, if people want to see like my basic list of that, I think we could come back to, but it was probably 3 weeks ago when I did the ADP study stuff that we talked about, maybe it was a month ago, but I've got a list of guys on there that fit the criteria. So, yeah.
Philadelphia Eagles up next, going into free agency. Like, I don't think they had a single available target. Like, this was the one offense where we did not want any wide receivers or tight ends to go to because, damn it, we only have one ball to go around. We're already run heavy as hell. Let's just keep it to Devontae and Dallas Goedert. So far, so good from that front. And obviously, Jalen Hurts has made it through all of the, just QB kind of movement throughout the league as well. So Jalen Hurts, I think, locked in again as a low-end QB1. Devontae, in that wide receiver 3 range. And Dallas Goedert, low-end tight end 1 in his own right. The backfield is where we have some questions. So Boston Scott, restricted free agent. He should be back in Philly. Kenneth Gainwell's still there. Jordan Howard remains an unrestricted free agent. Miles Sanders, some of the worst touchdown luck I think we've seen at the position in quite some time. He was working as the lead back. Dwayne, I don't hate Sanders where he's going, in that RB3 range. He's kind of fallen outside, like he's fallen past the dead zone. So I don't think we need to worry about using a 4th or 5th round pick on him. We can maybe even get him cheaper. I will just say, what the hell is going on with the Kenneth Gainwell love? Are people still just sticking to like their pre-draft evaluations of the guy? Like it was like a Laviska Shenault level, like his hystericalness going on in this backfield. Like how many guys needed to get hurt for Kenneth Gainwell to find the field? Like Jordan Howard came in off the streets and was immediately getting used more for Gainwell. I have no idea how many guys, if it might be an infinite number of running backs who need to get hurt for Kenneth Gainwell to get an early down role in this offense. He's a pass catcher with a quarterback that scrambles instead of checking the ball down. Yet I see him on freaking Underdog. We're going as the RB43. I cannot think of a single good reason to draft Gainwell inside the top 50, maybe even 60 running backs, Dwayne. That's my big takeaway here. So Hurts and maybe Devontae or Goddard have value, but this backfield, man, unless you want Sanders as, a cheaper guy that falls, that's all I'm looking at.
Yeah, the way I'm looking, I've got Gainwell below his ADP. He's at 43. I've got him at 52 right now. So 75.9 receiving grade, 75.8 PFF pass block grade are both really encouraging, and yards per route run 1.53. So I think the thing that if you're looking at Gainwell, I think, you're getting kind of overhyped if you're taking him in the 40s. But I think the profile you're looking at is like, could he turn into a James White? Could he turn into a Naheem Hines? Could he turn into a JD McKissick? I think that's the upside of the profile for Gainwell. Then if Sanders were to get hurt, maybe he gets a little more carries. But to your point, they've just shown us so far anyway, like when that situation happens, they're just going to use a committee. So I think with Gainwell in a PPR format and a half PPR, I like him. Standard, I would have no interest in Kenneth Gainwell. So I think that I'm going to have some exposure to Gainwell, but I'm definitely not a player that I'm trying to reach for and thinking that, oh my God, like this, this guy's going to take over the Eagles backfield. I don't think that's the approach, but I think in the PPR format, he could give some value.
Dude, he only caught 14 passes from week 8 to 18. Like, you can throw in the playoff game in there. He caught 19 passes. Like, if you want to use a decent split, it's like, look at the Eagles offense in weeks 1 through 7 when they were pretending that Hurts could, lead like a legitimate NFL passing game. And then look starting in that Lions game when they became the most run-heavy offense in the NFL. They basically phased Gainwell out of the offense. He came back, in the playoff game. Like, if the Eagles are going to fall behind by 3-4 touchdowns, he'll probably get out there and hurry up comeback mode. And when the defense is playing 40 yards back every play, he'll probably have some decent numbers. Not the type of guy I'm looking to Gainwell is going ahead of the Naeem Hines and like J.D. McKissick's of the world that we know are what we're hoping Gainwell can be. So.
See, I wouldn't be doing that. Exactly. I think that's the way you need to think about it. Like, is you're hoping that he turns into one of those profiles, and he's got blockers to doing that.
Yeah.
Like you just mentioned, they want to be a run-heavy team, and Jalen Hurts likes to freaking scramble. He doesn't, a lot of times the scrambling quarterbacks don't throw the ball, don't check it down to the back. So he's got some things working against him from a standpoint of even reaching the profile that we're hoping he can maybe live up to.
And I'll tell you what, if the ceiling of a guy is like another guy that's ranked outside the top 40, maybe you shouldn't be chasing that in the first place. Pittsburgh Steelers, Big Ben Roethlisberger.
Now here's a guy.
Ben Roethlisberger retired. Mitch Trubisky now under center. I was getting chastised some on the old quote tweet graphic for saying Trubisky could be a better fantasy quarterback than real life. And I still think that's true. But at the end of the day, he's so cheap. He's in the Jameis Mariota kind of tier where like, okay, we can pick a game here or there or a stretch and kind of point towards him. Maybe supplying some fantasy value, better situation around him. At the end of the day, most 1 QB leagues, no one's going to ever be rostering this dude in 2021. But maybe
I would take Trubisky over both of those. Just because,
what about Daniel Jones?
Just because I would take him over Daniel Jones.
Wow.
Just to give it a shot. Like, I like the weapons better. I still like the team better than the Giants overall. But we'll see. Like, it's close. Like, I like DeBoll, like, as a head coach. So I think there's positives there. But I think just with Trubisky, I think I get where you're going. Like, those two are close. I still like the weapons better for Mitch, right? We have a lot of questions about the weapons with the Giants. We think, they could be, but will they be? We don't know. Whereas with the Steelers, like, I think we just know more about the offense. I feel a little bit better about it.
Najee's still very much locked in as the RB1. You're going to be hard pressed. You only need one hand to count the number of running backs you're going to want ahead of Najee in fantasy this year. Wide receiver and tight end to a lesser extent is where it's interesting. Pat Freiermuth, I think it's okay having him around that tight end one borderline. There's some guys I'm going to prioritize. I'm just still a little bit concerned if he gets the full-time role. Should he? Yes, but brought this up before. I don't love that he's splitting snaps with Zach Gentry in our last game that we really have a legitimate sample from. With that said, Chase Claypool versus Deontay Johnson. Dwayne, I've been all over Deontay the last 2 years because we could buy him as like a wide receiver 3, and we knew he had the wide receiver 1 workload with Big Ben. I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. Pittsburgh Steelers, every time they put a microphone in front of Mason Rudolph's face, he talks about how the offense is going to be different and not Big Ben style. They're probably not going to be throwing, a shit ton of short passes all game again. Maybe it is going to be the Chase Claypool show as the wide receiver 1. I think Deontay is really good. I'm not convinced he's a legit like top 5, top 10 receiver talent. I don't like seeing his name at the bottom of a lot of efficiency metrics when we try to look through this. And I get it. Big Ben was not helping those matters, and I'm not worried about Deontay because of the drops. I just also think Claypool is pretty damn good, and now we're being asked to really buy Deontay for the first time at his ceiling. I'm not going to be signing up to take him as a top 15 receiver, Dwayne. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? What you're talking about is like we're being forced now to take Deontay Johnson at his ceiling, and we've got a quarterback change. I'm not going to overthink it. I think if you're drafting multiple teams, you want to get your exposure to Deontay Johnson, but you're not going to be overweight on him. Like, is the best way I can put it. I'm much more likely to be overweight on Chase Claypool because of the large disparity, right? Like, Chase Claypool is a name right now. If you're drafting in best ball, he's on my list of you should be drafting him today. His ADP is going to creep up. Why? Because he fits the wide receiver 2, the year 2, year 3 model of a guy that was taken early in a draft. Those guys creep up. We talked about it on that episode. They're going to creep up throughout, this offseason. And so right now, Deontay Johnson's already priced at the high end. Claypool is priced at, a 9th round, 10th round ADP, and that is going to move up. So you want to get your exposure to Claypool now. And let's just real quick, Juju's gone. So Claypool is going, and you got James Washington gone. Remember, there had been a rotation of those guys. So when they go to 12 and 21, meaning 2 tight ends or 2 running backs, running back and a fullback, that's 21 personnel. When they went to those formations, you were seeing Juju sometimes stay on the field and Claypool leave. And so now with Washington gone, with Juju gone, Claypool should have like the cleanest path he's had in his career into his routes run per team dropback. He was 65% as a rookie. and still came through, in fantasy. And then last year he was at 71%. I think this is the year where Deontay Johnson's probably going to be, if he's healthy. The only thing that's held back Deontay in this number has been health, but he'll be out there 95% of the time. If he's healthy, I think Claypool's probably going to be 85, 90%, which is about a 20% bump. Just that alone is enough to think that Chase Claypool's going to have a better year than last season. And CeeDee Lamb kind of fits in a similar boat. I've done some analysis like that on Lamb already. So I think Claypool's absolutely, you should be on it right now.
Still just 23 years old. The only bad thing to say about Claypool is he accidentally celebrated a first down too long in one game. I mean, come on, people. Let's find bigger things to worry about. San Francisco 49ers, we are down to our last 5 teams for the first ever 3+ hour podcast for PFF Fantasy. Gotta love it, Dwain. We are living our best life here on March 25th. But yes, with San Fran, Jimmy Garoppolo, still a member of the 49ers. We kind of heard a hilarious rumor that some team has offered 2 second-round picks for him. Not so sure about that. Dwain, what percentage certainty do you think Trey Lance is under center week 1? I'm probably 85%.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. My biggest thing for Lance is everyone's already assuming the absolute best. We talked about it yesterday. So he's a name that's on the list of not drafting right now because people are freaking already drafting him way too high. I mean, here we go again. It's insane. But I think as we get closer to the season and people remember, you get a lot more of the casual people coming in drafting, and no hate on the casuals. We love everybody, but they're not going to want to take that risk on Claypool, just like they didn't want to take the risk on Hurts. Once you didn't just have all the hardcore fantasy people drafting and you saw more and more people getting in, Hurts ADP started to move down. Right. So I think we're going to see the same thing with Trey Lance, but I think 75, 85%, is a good bet. Look, if Jimmy G is still on the roster, the number's going to go down for me.
Yeah.
But the longer we wait, and if Jimmy G's still there, if we get to August and Jimmy G's still on their roster, I mean, I'll probably have it at a coin flip at that point. We'll be listening to the reports out of camp, but can we even trust, especially in 49er land? God, talk about getting broadsided by a freaking bus walking across the street is trying to figure out a freaking San Francisco 49ers pecking order from beat reports. It's a madhouse.
The good news is we don't have too many more any new big names to worry about here. All right, they added Trent Sherfield, River Craycraft and Trenton Cannon to the wide receiver and running back rooms. Not really expecting any of them to have.
I bet River Craycraft's parents. I bet they're absolutely.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. They all left. Sorry to Mr. and
Still
Mrs.
stands.
Craycraft.
Still stands. River Craycraft parents. I bet they're hippies. Just listen to the name. It sounds like a very, and this isn't bad, but an artsy family. A lot of art. Probably a lot of outdoors activities. Anyway, a lot of gardening.
I think the 5 remaining listeners we had probably just turned off the pod, but that's okay. Ray McLeod is actually the only guy still in the picture, but with Jawan Jennings re-signed, he should continue to be that non-viable fantasy wide receiver 3. Dwain, if there is a big winner from this offseason, other than presumed QB1 Trey Lance, but we've talked about the problem moving from Jimmy G to Trey Lance, is that there's now fewer targets to go around. There's fewer rush attempts to go around. Good things for Trey Lance as a fantasy QB, not so much for all of his weapons. With that said, Elijah Mitchell here, big time winner. Raheem Mostert goes to Miami. They bring back Jeff Wilson and JaMychal Hasty, and they still have Trey Sermon. So that could legitimately be their RB depth chart. 3 guys that we saw Kyle Shanahan consistently play Elijah Mitchell over. Now, we're going to have some Debo. We're going to have, obviously, Trey Lance soaking his way in there. But Elijah Mitchell, we don't need to treat him as an RB1, but if he's going to be there in the low-end RB2 range, is he someone that you think is going to fall in the dead zone, or are we okay trusting him?
No, I mean, as long as they don't draft another back, Elijah Mitchell's ADP is going to go up. So he's another one like Michael Carter where I would be really trying to split, the way I'm thinking about it. And the deal is look, he came in and he played great, but he just doesn't have the draft capital. Same thing with Michael Carter, and Carter's draft capital is a little better. But if we get through draft season and they didn't take another back, I think Mitchell will slowly creep up the ADPs. I don't think you'll see a huge lift because my guess is most people are – another reason he's being held down is because Debo's involved, right, in the backfield. And we know that you still have a Jeff Wilson who re-signed. There's other guys, Trey Sermon, who knows what's going to happen there. I think just the uncertainty of the way Kyle Shanahan handles his backfield is also baked into his ADP. So I think with Carter, you'll see a bigger jump if they don't add anyone to the backfield. I think Mitchell, you'll still see a little small climb as we get closer to the season if they don't add someone in the draft.
Look, I understand Deebo Samuel's awesome. His role is sweet. Watching him and Trent Williams swagger out with the boombox, it was one of my favorite parts about their playoff run. I don't think I want to buy him as a top 6 freaking wide receiver, Dwayne. We're buying a scat back, essentially. Look at Deebo Samuel's receiving numbers ever since they got Brandon Ayuk out of the doghouse. The dude was going weeks without catching even 5 balls in a game. He didn't catch 5 passes in the playoffs. I don't think he's going to score a rushing touchdown every 7 or 8 times he touches the ball again, man. We're asking an awful lot out of Deebo from an efficiency standpoint, and maybe he can do it. He is an awesome player. But my God, man, do we really want to draft Deebo ahead of CeeDee Lamb, ahead of true number 1 receivers? Because I don't think this is his role would be awesome if he was a pure running back. I don't think this is great, man. Give me 150 targets versus 100 targets and 50 rush attempts.
Yeah, I think this is where you kind of come down to your philosophy of, do you want to bet more on being able to predict the situation right? Or do you just want to go ahead and bet more on the talent that you've seen already just absolutely go freaking bonkers? And it's a real question, because we haven't seen CeeDee Lamb go bonkers yet. We think he could. We've actually seen Deebo Samuel dominate other grown freaking men. Not just, manage to put up numbers, dominate them on another level. And so you just don't see players like that much. And so that's what Deebo is, a player that I'm with you. I think his role is kind of fragile.
He could be third on his own team in targets. That's possible.
It could be. But at the same time, when I look at him and I'm like, he's a top 10 talent in the NFL. Yeah. So it's what do you do with it? You don't want to not have Deebo Samuel on some teams. But to your point, I think it will keep me. There's no way I end up in most early round picks. You don't want to be overweight, right? A lot of what you're trying to do in the early rounds is just avoid busts, avoid injuries. So this isn't a huge takeaway, but I'm not going to be overweight on Deebo. If anything, I could see myself being slightly underweight, to your point, on Deebo, but I want to have my exposure because he's just such a good player.
Dude, are we even positive he's going to have that wide back role? They didn't start doing it until Mitchell got hurt. Remember how bad their running back room was?
Dude, it's the 49ers. We don't know anything. Let's just move on.
Well said, Dwayne. Moving on, Seattle Seahawks.
We're going to talk about that situation 55 times before anybody drafts.
At least. Seahawks, Drew Lock, the QB1 for now. We've heard some Baker Mayfield rumors, obviously, in the market during the draft. Either way, you're not going to want to touch any of those parties involved in fantasy land. I just hope that maybe, just maybe, whoever is under center can help enable Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. Not overly sold on that, though. I do think betting on Metcalf long-term as a dynasty guy. Metcalf. There we go. All pronunciations go out the window when you're 3 hours in. I think betting on him, man, in dynasty is fine, but my goodness, I'm dropping him down because we've always had, he's overcome the volume issues for the most part because of Russ. Now, if we take away the efficiency, I don't trust the Seahawks to really feature Metcalf and Lockett as their top 2 guys because they wouldn't do it before. So why should we expect that to change? Tight end, Gerald Everett is out of the picture. Can we trust Noah Fant as the number 1 guy? Of course not, because Will Dissly, had to get over $10 million in guaranteed money for whatever reason. So
Noah Fant finally gets to move on, which he's wanted to, and he's still stuck with Drew Lock.
Still stuck with Drew Lock and still stuck in a tight end committee as well. Just can't win if you're Noah Fant. The one question, Dwayne, because again, I think we're both lower, or we should be lower than consensus on Metcalf and Lockett. And we'll get through that.
I think you're going to be further lower than me. I need to move him down some more. I'm already lower. Again, he's similar to Deebo. We have seen Metcalf go beast, just completely beast out, right?
I have Metcalf wide receiver 16.
Yeah, so I think I have him at 12 or something like that. So, and I think he's going 8 right now on Underdog. So, we're below. It's a player you're going to want to have some exposure to because he's an awesome football player. And he has the traits that he could dominate. He really could. But wow, bad offense, doesn't run enough plays, bad quarterback. going to have to share with Tyler Lockett. Boy, there's a lot of negative shit piling up. Excuse my French there, like for DK Metcalf.
Running back is where it's interesting. Rashad Penny did come back. He was being featured at the end of the year. Probably won a good chunk of you listeners, your league, if you're lucky enough to get him under the roster. Now, Chris Carson apparently maybe will be back from his degenerative neck issue. I don't know. It doesn't sound great. Even if he is back, maybe Penny keeps taking over. The last time they were both healthy was at the end of 2019 for like a 2-game stretch where they were used pretty evenly. Obviously, the upside of being in this offense has cratered without Russell Wilson under center. To me, Dwayne, I think Penny is okay at where he's going. He's not going to be in that dead zone. If you are going hero RB or just pure zero RB, you could do worse than signing on to have Penny as a super high upside, RB2, RB3, once we're hopefully getting into, round 7, 8.
Yeah, Penny is in the draft now bucket because what's the worst case scenario right now? Most people are assuming it's some sort of a split backfield back in Seattle, and so that's where he's being priced. What's the most likely piece of news we're going to get that's going to change? People are already assuming Chris Carson's going to have a role, and so that's the way Penny is priced. So it's not like Penny's ADP is going to go down. It's just not. It's going to stay around where it's at. The most likely change for Penny is up when we hear more news that, oh wow, Chris Carson isn't tracking well. Oh, wow, Chris Carson may not play this season. Oh, my God, Chris Carson's not going to play. Those are your ranges of stories of news that's going to break on Penny. And any one of them are at periods of time going to move his ADP up, most likely. And if you get to the point where we're not sure Chris Carson's going to play, like Penny's going to move up, probably at least a round, maybe 2 rounds. And if you ever hear that Carson's gone, he's out of the picture, like Penny's going to go in round 4. So now's the time to draft Rashad Penny. I don't think there's any sort of news that's going to make him go down in ADP, right? Even if they came out tomorrow and said Chris Carson's going to be able to play this season, I think it's already priced into where Rashad Penny's going in ADP.
November 12th, Pete Carroll called Chris Carson a game time decision on November 19th. 7 days later, it gets unveiled that he's undergoing season-ending neck surgery. And then, January 10th, Pete Carroll told reporters that he expects Carson to be ready to go when training camp kicks off. Respectfully, screw you, Pete Carroll, from a fantasy football standpoint. Just tell us if the guy's hurt or not, or shut the hell up about it. Pull the – God, man, just – all right, enough of the Seahawks. Enough of the freaking Seahawks. 3 more squads. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Feels like Tom Brady unretired 6 months ago. Apparently it was much closer than that. But yeah, really looking at, this the whole really gang being back together. Again, Leonard Fournette, anyone's idea of a top 10 fantasy back because we love those sweet, sweet targets. We also have, Chris Godwin with the long-term deal. We'll see how that recovery goes from the ACL. I know Godwin himself wouldn't put a timetable on it. Hopefully he's good to go sooner rather than later. We know Mike Evans will be getting his. We also know that Tom Brady's not necessarily going to be feeding Evans that 150, mega Jameis-esque target workload. So I do think Evans is still tough to kind of creep into the true wide receiver 1 category. Either way, though, he's someone that you're going to be happy to have on the fantasy squad. Gronk, we got a report coming out recently saying that maybe he actually is torn on coming back. I think they're just trying to milk the Bucs for some extra money. Gronk even said himself in that barbershop that, Tommy made him wait for a couple months, so he's going to do the same to the Buccaneers. I would, if I could bet on it, I would think Gronk is going to be there, and then he will be a top 10 tight end in fantasy land. I think the big question here, Dwayne, is what to make of Russell Gage, because if Godwin is going to miss some time, now we have Gage working as the number 2 or number 3 pass game option, and even once Godwin is back, Gage is not Antonio Brown. He's not going to be Antonio Brown. Please, for the love of God, don't think I'm putting him in the same category as Antonio Brown as an on-field player. But AB last year, he was a bargain. And this year, so is Russell Gage, man. I mean, look at him on the underdog right now. Wide receiver 67. And I think that's being impacted by some of the stuff pre-free agency. Even if he's up into the 40s or so, man, we're looking at a situation where that's probably, if he's going in the wide receiver 40 range, that's probably his floor as a number 3 wide receiver there. Or maybe not floor, maybe his median projection if Godwin and Evans are healthy all year. But if Godwin misses a chunk of time, we're looking at a guy with, as an upside wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I like Gage. I've got him right now. I've got him at 51 And so you might have him a little bit higher. Like we've already covered in the past, like why I like him. He does a really good job against man coverage. He surprised me in a lot of different metrics as far as separation, targets per route run, all those sort of things. And that's really what the Bucs are looking for in losing Antonio Brown, because he led the team in those categories. To your point,
42.
Not a replica of Antonio Brown, but going to get to play with the GOAT. Has showed on a limited amount of routes earlier in his career, showed some positive things. His role grew with the Falcons. He continued to produce. It's the kind of player like that intrigues me. And to your point, he could have extra value earlier in the season with Godwin recovering. If Godwin all of a sudden takes longer than we think to get back, like Russell Gage, you could have, a wide receiver 3 on your hands for maybe the first month and a half of the season. And then, like, what if one of the other players gets hurt? What if Gronk gets hurt at some point in the season? Could happen. What if Godwin re-injures something? Mike Evans gets hurt. Like, he immediately is good enough to step in, and he's now getting to play with Tom Brady, and he's going to see he's got an ability to actually earn those targets, right? It's not just, now there's empty targets, so you get to take them just because we're going to pencil you in. With Russell Gage, he's actually good enough, I think, to go out there and do that. So I think there's a lot of different ways to think about Russell Gage returning value to you this season. And to your point, like I definitely have him under the current ADP at underdog. I'll have to look at FFPC to see like what's adjusted. I don't think it's going to move a ton. To be honest, I think even though he signed with the Bucs, most people are going to look at him and say, "Oh, he's the third or fourth option." Yeah. I think the way you're thinking about it is the right way. Like, underlying metrics look good, and there are multiple paths to him earning a larger role than what we think he's going to have right now.
Tennessee Titans still got Ryan Tannehill under center. Obviously, we're all hoping Derrick Henry is going to be healthy enough to do his thing. Dwayne and I each have Henry as our RB4. Like, guys, even when he ran for 2,000 yards, he wasn't the RB1 that year because pass catching is so freaking important. So the fact they brought back Dontrell Hilliard, unfortunately, I think puts an end to the pipe dream of Henry actually having a big time role as a receiver. Last year, low key, 18 catches in 8 games. Previous career high was 19 set in 2020. Maybe he'll finally get 20, man. But I don't think it's going to be the 40 or 50 that could help us put him, ahead of guys like McCaffrey and obviously like even Jonathan Taylor, who can at least catch 30 plus passes in a season. I think the wide receiver room is where it's most interesting. Keep an eye on tight end. Austin Hooper is now there, and they haven't re-signed Ferkser. They haven't re-signed Michael Pruitt. Jeff Swain shouldn't be too much of an issue, but Hooper's another one of those guys like Mo Alley Cox, where I don't think anyone's going to be signing him on with real expectations, before the season starts. But when Dwayne and I are here on the first Sunday night and we see that Austin Hooper 80% route rate, that's when we might be jumping on the train. Wide receiver is where it gets a little more interesting. Dwayne, A.J. Brown, you can rank him wide receiver 6, wide receiver 9. You're going to be hard pressed to rank him as a non-wide receiver 1. Are you interested in Robert Woods? Because I've heard some people talk about how, he can fill the Corey Davis role. One, I think he's going to be used much differently than Corey Davis. Davis is more of a downfield threat for the Titans. 2, Corey Davis was like a wide receiver 30 that year. I'm not so sure that's the upside we should be looking to chase much to begin with. Robert Woods, I think, coming to this team is someone that's going to be a great real-life addition. I mean, PFF's #1 run-blocking receiver last year. He's one of only 5 wide receivers with at least 50 rush attempts over the past 4 years. Super versatile. I think he can impact games, only getting, a couple of targets. I'm just not so sure he's someone that we should be going out of our way to get on our fantasy squad. He's also 30 years old, coming off a major injury.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's run heavy offense.
Yeah.
And they're run heavy in every game script. They don't care. They don't care if they're losing, if they're close, if they're leading. They are going to run the football. They even continued to do that once Derrick Henry was gone last year. Got a little bit less run centric, but still compared to the rest of the league, like one of the most run heavy teams. So I don't see that changing. So that makes Woods the #2 option, in a low volume pass game. That means he's going to have to come through with efficiency. Now he's age 30. He's not necessarily like this big playmaker. I think he's best fit in a high volume passing offense where he gets to serve as the wide receiver 2. The nature of the offense helps boost, right, really his target share. So I do think, like you said, good for the Titans. Could make the Titans just a better team overall. But I look at Robert Woods as a wide receiver 4.
Where do you think Tannehill finished last year, fantasy points per game among QBs?
Oh man, I don't know. It's like 15. I don't know.
Nailed it. 15, 7 rushing touchdowns in consecutive years. I'm not so sure we can chalk those in, but I guess the upside's just not there, and that's probably why we don't need to worry about Tannehill that much. But
I think he belongs just below. I think you got Cousins and Carr together.
Tier.
In the bottom of the tier, like it's all one tier, but kind of like sub-tier within it. I think Tannehill's kind of like your backstop. Like, so if you were to take Trey Lance and then you wanted to have a backstop of, one of these quarterbacks that don't run but could feasibly throw 35 touchdowns, I think easily you put Carr and Cousins into the 35 touchdown range. That would be a stretch for Tannehill, but you still know what you're getting. And he does give you a little more upside from the rushing department, which kind of offsets, not feeling as bullish, right, on the number of touchdown passes you think he's going to throw in yards.
I was just surprised to see that QB 15 finish, because to me it felt like a bit of a step back, because 2 previous years he was QB 10, QB 12, and QB 15. I get it. The line's going down, but yeah, I think you put it best. So he's a good backstop, certainly not someone to necessarily build your team around. We have reached the final team, the Washington Commanders. Really, I guess some of the worst heartbreak I had during the entire free agency cycle was them bringing back J.D. McKissic. Dwayne, I mean, you have Antonio Gibson, I believe, like RB23 or so. The guys, like J.D. McKissic they just brought him back. What do you think is going to happen? Just out of the blue, he's going to sit back. Like, I understand we want that to happen. If it hasn't happened yet, I don't know what's going to. Let's not forget, Antonio Gibson really was not good last year, okay? He got a ton of volume, especially at the end of the season. He was only one of 4 running backs to hit 300 touches, but on the ground, man, couldn't stop fumbling, wasn't giving us the big-time explosive play rate, wasn't as shifty as he was in year 1. It wasn't good, and now we have McKissic, who is good at his job, and he's someone that, again, I'm going to say this stat 10 million more times this offseason. Only Alvin Kamara has more catches over the last 2 seasons. So, yeah, bringing someone back with a similar receiving workload as Alvin Kamara is bad for Antonio Gibson. Shocker there. So, not feeling great about that. Dwayne and I are going to be lower on Gibson than consensus throughout the offseason, and we are good with that.
Now, if you're in Dynasty and you think you can still get something for Gibson, just sell. Like, they don't have a ton of draft capital wrapped up in the guy. You're going to look up, and he's going to be 27. Yeah. Like, he'll be 24 this year. They signed McKissic to a 2-year deal. I think it's just you're probably going to get more out of moving him now than trying to hold on. That's the way I look at his profile at this point. Had McKissic been gone, we were all in. But like this just it destroys his value.
Terry McLaurin facing, sadly, the best quarterback situation of his career with Carson Wentz under center. I am bullish on Terry this year, but we need to see exactly what's going to go on in the draft. I will drop him if they go ahead and add someone like a Drake London, but if we're going into week 1 with Terry, undisputed wide receiver 1, Curtis Samuel, wide receiver 2, then I think that's a situation where we can actually treat McLaurin as a legitimate upside wide receiver 2. So again, the draft's going to make a big difference here. Tight end, it looks like Logan Thomas is going to be the feature guy. We need to see how his recovery goes back from injury. But Dwayne, I think now we already talked about Gibson. Overall thoughts on McLaurin and Curtis Samuel. Am I maybe just reading a little bit too much into an offense that, does have Carson Wentz under center?
Well, I think, we've talked about Wentz's struggles already earlier. Yeah. So if anybody isn't, already fully asleep, and you just wake up and you hear us talking, you can rewind to that part, if you missed it because you passed out. But with McLaurin, you're going to have to split this into 2 episodes. With McLaurin, I'm not as concerned, honestly, about if they add someone. I think that will probably impact his ADP more than it will the way I feel about him. And here's why. Like, look, this has been a starved passing game for other options, the whole time Terry McLaurin's been there. Yeah. His adjusted target shares are 22%, 23%, and 23%. So I think we basically know what he is. He's probably not going to bounce up into being a 30% target share guy. So if that's the case, I would rather him be in an offense that has another weapon that defenses are worried about. That's where I think you start to talk about the efficiency. Like, you hear these arguments all the time and you see them on Twitter. Well, the efficiency is going to go up this or that. The way I look at these things, like, you're obviously looking at both, but for a profile like McLaurin, he's probably about what he is. He might get to 25% of the targets, and that would be great. But if you know he's never going to be you can't never say never, but if most likely he's never going to be a 30, 32, 33% alpha, then why not just add another weapon that could potentially make the overall offense better and make his life better? And so that's the way that I'm looking at McLaurin. Even if they drafted Drake London in the first round, I don't think I'm going to move his ADP because I think he's still going to get his 22 to 23%. Drake London's just going to take it from a lot of other guys on the team that didn't deserve targets last year.
That is going to wrap up, this short and sweet edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Dwain, next week, I saw you sent in our, company Slack chat. You got your QB, running back, wide receiver, and tight end best ball tiers. I'm going to have my top 50, top 250, top 50. That'd be a hard article.
I was like, wow, you're really setting some stretch goals.
really putting in the hours. Top 250 will be out on Monday, and I got some extra best ball related content. I'm going to be starting, we're going to do some best ball streams here. I haven't picked a night yet. I'll talk to you more about that later, Dwain, but I'm sure I'll drag your ass onto those plenty, and we'll convert them into
those.
Yeah,
and I think people love them. Yeah.
I'm gonna finagle this so we can go live with StreamYard on the YouTube, and you guys can comment. We can be a lot more interactive throughout the episode, so I think that'll be a good time. And I'm gonna push those episodes onto the podcast. And hey, if you don't really enjoy the best ball stream, that's fine. Don't listen to it. But I just figure might as well give people the opportunity to also do so. Same thing in mind with an upcoming USFL podcast that I'm going to be publishing on this channel. So if you guys really want to dive into a league that has 4 freaking games, that's it. That's all you need to keep an eye on throughout the week. It's a Sunday afternoon slate, but it's being called a football league. I will keep you fully on updated with that. Gambling, fantasy, all that, so much more with the USFL side of things. Dwain, haven't talked about next week's plan, but I think the strategy would make the most sense. Let's pod 4 times, QB, RB, wide receiver, tight end, and let's just crush it, man. Why the hell not?
Why the hell not? I think that sounds great, Ian. It'll go right along with where my brain's already at. So you're just making it easy on me.
Love it. Love you, Dwain. Love all you listeners out there
too,
as well. For Dwain, I'm Ian. Thanks so much for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Until next time, take care, everybody.